Hey guys, good to see you guys again for yet another episode. We're going to deal with, like my Gogh hat, this comes all the way from Portugal and all the way through France, through Al, through Orvez, through the Netherlands, and all the way back to South Africa. Got a little bit scarred over here, but otherwise it's okay. Um, Hope you guys are all well. I'm not going to take very long to get cracking. We're not going to deal with too much besides the letters. We're going to basically just deal with the letters and try and get through June. The amazing thing with June is there are some incredible paintings that follow this one. So let's have a look at who's here. Sharon Tuck, Helena, Gloria, Lorraine, Mel. Thanks a lot, Mel. Magical Mother, all the peaches in place. Josie, good to see you guys here. Hopefully some of the mods will join us a bit later. Anyway, cheers. This is still a warm cup of coffee. It's raining outside. It's quite cold, but yeah, it's sort of between should you wear a fleece and a t-shirt. Okay, just a little bit of an update on my personal situation. My health feels a little bit better. I think it is sleep related. I think if I sleep well, I feel well. I've kind of got a lot in my mind. The neighborhood situation has deteriorated pretty badly. It's definitely a concern. It's probably at its worst level yet. We'll see where it goes from here. I think it can only, from where we are today, can only improve. Let's see if that happens. Okay, let's get cracking. So yeah, so sorry, there was just one more thing I wanted to say. I think on the subject of that, I think I really understand. It's going to sound funny, but I think I really understand what Van Gogh was going through, in the sense that when you are really dedicated and you're working hard and you are very preoccupied with work, then things in the sort of background seem to kind of be in the background, right? And I think that is exactly what happened with him. Was he worked so diligently, he was such a hard worker that he didn't really pay that much attention to perhaps the people around him. And as a result, the people around him didn't pay that much attention to him. So in a way, he gets punished for his diligence. He kind of gets punished for working as hard as he does by kind of getting what's the word? Just people around him. He didn't really realize it because he's just working so hard. But people around him were like gossiping and whispering and sort of sneering behind his back. And he's very focused on what he's trying to do. Meanwhile, that's actually literally what's going on. That's literally what's going on kind of in the background. And I suppose you could say anyone who's very caught up in their work, you might say, is not completely in the real world, in terms of, even though it might be to do with the real world, but they might not be totally appraised with the real world. But in terms of like little details, I suppose those details do matter, but little details of, I don't know, the sort of details that some people fuss over. And anyway, but all I'm trying to say is I think I can understand why people didn't really like him and why he struggled with his work. It's almost like he was so caught up in his work that if he kind of didn't realize that the people around him were actually what's the word? Yeah, kind of sneering kind of thing. Because they didn't really understand him, they didn't understand what he was doing. And what was he supposed to do? Explain it to them? Really, I don't know. I'm not really sure. How do you solve that problem? Do you stop working? Oh, sorry, I'm working too hard. Let me be just like you, right? Yeah, no, that's definitely true. Definitely true. Okay, well, anyway, let us let's continue. Thanks a lot for your. But you guys agree with what I'm saying? Because he's so preoccupied with work, he doesn't kind of see the curveball of gossip and all that kind of stuff, which can become a factor as that builds up. Do you agree with what I'm saying? And I mean, he's ultimately going to get thrown out of all. The all's folk are going to put up a petition saying, please, we need this guy out of here. And then, so whose fault is that? Is that his fault? Is it their fault? Is that just life? What is it? Come, boy. I would love to say that Timmy is been like a rock steady friend, like he's been man's best friend. But Timmy's actually been unusually naughty. He seems to have gotten into the habit of the moment he notices that I don't know, he somehow seems to sense that I'm not paying attention to him, and then he just slips away. And I mean, I take him for a walk every single day, but I'm just saying, but if I take the garbage out, or if um, I don't know, whatever it is, today I was pruning some trees. If I do something like that, then he will sneak away, and then I've like got to go and find him. And sometimes takes quite a long time. And I don't know, I'm actually getting quite irritated with it. As I said, I take him for a walk every single day, and now he's sort of opportunistically. It's almost like when you call him, it's now almost like when you're in school and you're saying to the kids, be quiet. Yeah, 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 teacher. Yeah, I heard you. I heard you, but never mind. I think he's kind of growing up, Timmy, and is kind of asserting his dogginess in a way, and he's aware of what he can get away with. So I don't know. I guess the answer is I'm putting him back on his harness and back on his leash, just so that he's a little bit more connected to me when we do go for walks. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's definitely an advanced teenager in that sense. Okay. Anyway, without further ado, let's deal with these letters. Okay. My dear Thea, this is 15th June, 1888. In case of doubt, it is better to do nothing, I think. That is what I said in the letter to Gogh, and that is what I think now, having read his answer. If he, on his part, returns to the idea, he's very welcome, but we should look to, I don't know just what, if at the moment we pressed him to say yes. You see that I have had your letter. Thank you very much. There was a lot in it. Thank you very much for the 100 franc note. As for the delay of the wire, it was dated Sunday, so it is the postman's fault, but it did not matter because the coach for Stes Marie runs every day. Only what kept me back was the necessity of buying canvases and paying the rent. I'm going to jump out of this just for a moment. We are at the 15th of June, and they basically extended, it's like they are extending, have extended an invitation to Paul Gauguin. How long do you think it's between the 15th of June and when he ultimately pitches up in all? Because I mean, he does pitch up. Do any of you know? That's interesting, Lorraine. Yeah, I think you're right about that. Um, do any of you know how long it took him from basically this time to when he actually pitched up in all? Yeah, it is months. Is months. So bear in mind, it's half the year is already passed. It's already um, middle of summer. It's almost July, and also by the middle of December, Gogh would actually be writing to Theo to say, we are totally incompatible. Can you help me get out of here? Okay, so I'm going to give you the answer now. Just because I want you to prep you for what Vincent's about to go through. He's going to go through 4 months of maybe I'm coming, maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm coming, maybe I'm not. And then he eventually arrives in late September. And he's basically there for 2 months, October, November, and then he's gone again. And the thing I want you to focus on is just how you can get a sense of how much Vincent is depending on hoping for investing himself in this whole idea of Gogh joining him. And then when he joins him, there's this short honeymoon of like 2 or 3 weeks, and then it's over, and then it goes downhill from there. And so again, it's this question, how does he lose his ear, right? Because the picture behind me is an absolute triumph. He's really on top of his game. In the middle of summer 1888, his art is where it needs to be. He is physically, geographically where he needs to be. He's in quite a good space, except that he's a little lonely. That's the only thing that's really the issue. But it ends up being a grain of sand can break a machine, and in this case, it's his loneliness, right? Elise says, I'm at a restaurant right now. I want to say hello, hello, hello. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So he says, I've already hinted that I don't greatly care for Tassay's canvas for work in the open air. In the future, I think we will, hey, stop snoring. I think we will have the ordinary canvas. I bought 50 francs. You see he's snoring, but with his eyes open, so that doesn't count. He can sleep snore, but not snore with his eyes open. Okay. He says, I bought 50 francs worth of canvas with stretchers and all of that. Then he says, I must talk about what you wrote in your letter. I congratulate you on having the Monet exhibition at your place. That is pretty incredible that Vincent's brother, Theo, has an exhibition of Monet paintings. I think Monet is definitely one of my top 5 favorite artists of all time, where I like virtually all of his art. And so, wow, so he actually has a Monet exhibition in his home. Can you believe it? He says, I'm very sorry I can't see it. It'll certainly not do Tierstic any harm to see this exhibition. He will come round to it yet, but as you thought too, it'll be late. It is certainly odd that he has changed his mind about Zola. I know from experience that once he couldn't bear to hear a word about him. What a queer character Tierstic is. He has the excellent quality that however hard and fixed his opinions may be, once he has realized that a thing is actually different from what he thought, as with Zola, for instance, he turns around and becomes enthusiastic for it. Van Gogh is also a little bit like that. I mean, he was kind of a stickler for excrement-colored landscapes, and he didn't really know much about Impressionism, but he was poo-pooing it, and now he's the biggest Impressionist enthusiast. It certainly seems like that. Lord, what a pity that you and he don't see eye to eye in business now, but that's it. It's what I think is called fatality. You have been lucky to meet Guy de Maupassant. I've just read his first book, Des Vers, poems dedicated to his master Flaubert. There's one which is already himself. What fonded me of Delft is to Rembrandt among the painters, he is to Zola among the French novelists. Excuse me. Although Tierstic's visit was not all that I had dared to hope, and I do not disguise from myself that I made a false calculation based on the likelihood of his cooperation. He's still really, although he's painting, he's still very caught up in art strategy and art business and art networking, right? You notice that. In the business with Gauguin, too, perhaps, let's wait and see. I thought that he was on the rocks. In fact, in his last letter, he said something about if he croaks, which is a slang way of saying if he dies. Anyway, he says, there I was with money, and this boy who does better work than I do with none. So I said, he ought to have half of mine and let him if he likes. That's quite a honest admission from him, where he says, this boy who does better work than I do with less money. I must say at this point, I think the only painting that Van Gogh has produced that comes close and maybe is on par with Gauguin's work is the one behind me. So Van Gogh is just coming into his own, whereas Paul Gauguin is a little bit ahead of the curve in that respect. But if Gauguin isn't on the rocks, then I am in no great hurry, and I withdraw my proposal categorically. And the only question left for me is simply this. If I look for a comrade to work with, would it be a good thing? Would it be to my brother's advantage and mine? And would the other fellow lose by it, or would he gain? These are the questions that my mind is running on, but they'd have to come up against reality to become facts. I do not want to discuss Gauguin's project, having once thought the situation over this winter. You know the result. You know that I think a society of impressionists would be something of the same nature as the society of the 12 English pre-Raphaelites. And I think that the artists would guarantee each other a livelihood, each consenting to give a considerable number of pictures to the society, and that the profits as well as the losses should be had in common. I do not think that the society would last indefinitely, but I think that while it lasted, we should live courageously and produce. But if Gauguin and his Jewish bankers came tomorrow and asked me for no more than 10 pictures for a society of dealers and not a society of artists, on my word, I do not know if I'd have the confidence in it, though I would willingly give 50 to a society of artists. Isn't it a bit like Reed? Why say that Gabriel de la Roquette is a queer fellow if you do the same yourself? There, let the boy do as his heart inclines, but his plan is far from making me enthusiastic. I'd rather have things as they are, taking them for what they're worth, without altering them, than have them only half reformed. The great revolution, art for the artists. Lord, Lord, perhaps it is utopia. Well then, so much the worse for us. I feel that life is short and goes fast. Well, being a painter, one must paint after all. That's quite a comment there. I don't think he realized just how short his life is. He's got about 2 years left on the clock. He says, you know that since then, that winter, it has been casually discussed a good deal with Pissarro and the rest, and at present I will not try to say any more than this. That personally, before next year, I mean to do my share of 50 pictures. And if I manage to do that, then stick to my opinion. Now, I have to say, we should really try to enjoy Van Gogh in this period of buoyancy, because he's actually quite enthusiastic. He's quite positive. He seems to be on the ball, right, in a sense. He's got slight health problems, but he's kind of, you know, kind of got the world at his feet. And we must enjoy this moment with him, because a couple of months from now, that's going to be over, like for a full year. He's going to be in a really bad way. He's going to be mentally damaged. He's going to be physically mutilated. So from now, there are just a couple of months left where he's going to be in a pretty happy place. So let's try to enjoy that with him. The other thing is, so he's basically got probably something like just less than a year of, let's call it, either happy productivity or just productivity left in his life. Let's call it happy productivity. He's basically got 1 year of, let's call it, happy, positive productivity left. One of those years is going to be taken up in the asylum. So time is starting to already run out for him. So let's see again just what he does in the next 6 months. He's reached this pinnacle already in June. Let's see what he produces in July, August, September. It's going to be quite an exciting time. I got used to your voice before I sleep. Are you using me for ASMR? If you are, then that's fine. Okay. Cheers, Magical Mother. Okay. Cash, good to see you. Cash, have you newly subscribed here? I'm not sure if I've seen you on Team Peachtree before. Okay, let's continue. He says, you also know that since then, that winter, it has been casually discussed a good deal with Pissarro and the rest, and at present, I will not try to say any more than this, that personally, before next year, I mean to do my share of 50 pictures. If I manage to do that, then I'll stick to my opinion. So he's talking quite a big game, but, you know, in the last 2 months of his life, he would paint a picture a day for 70 days. He'd paint essentially 70 pictures in 70 days. And yeah, he's talking about 50 pictures in 6 months, right? Zircon says I'm late. Well, this is Team Peachtree. It's not the membership of. But anyway, okay. Today I sent you 3 drawings by post. You will think the one with the ricks in the farmyard too bizarre, but it was done in a great hurry as a cartoon for a picture, and it is to show you the idea. And so this is the one that he's referring to. And that's the painted version. We saw that last week. And now he refers to the harvest. He says, the harvest is rather more serious. That is the subject I've worked on this week on a size 30 canvas. It isn't at all finished. So at this point, he's still painting a picture over the course of like 7 days. And between now and the end of the year, he's going to paint a picture in one sitting. He's going to become more of an intense artist. He's going to become more of a fast painter, right? And so listen to this. McKnight, that's the American, Dodge McKnight, and one of his friends who has also been in Africa saw Harvest Today, this study, and said it was the best I'd done. And they're right. I've polled you guys, and it's rare that we see a 100% result, but I think we're seeing that here. Oh, not 100%. 78, almost 80% say Harvest was his best work to date. I'm guessing some of you think Potato Eaters may be better. Stephanie says she's cooking dinner, then eating. Okay, we'll see you a little bit later. Yeah, please take the pin polled if you haven't already. Thanks, Sharon. Okay, let's continue. I personally think that this is his best work to date. I personally think that, and I also think it's one of his best paintings ever. I'd probably put it in the top 10, maybe even the top 5. That's saying something because, he did a lot of, to me, crappy paintings, and then this one came out of nowhere. Anyway, it says, like Ankutine and friend Thomas, you can't help thinking something of yourself when you hear that said. But then I say, the rest certainly must seem damn bad. And I don't know, like, I personally think that is true. I personally think that is true. That's my own assessment. I think what may surprise a lot of people is I don't have an incredibly high opinion of Van Gogh. I like a handful of his paintings. I dislike most of his paintings. But what I really appreciate is his temerity, and I really appreciate his. I really think Starry Night, like the rest of the world, I really think that is a creative masterpiece. And I'm very much when it comes to art, I feel like creativity is what's the word? You measure how good art is through the creative aspect first and foremost. And so that is why Starry Night is so exceptional. Not just that, also the exceptional circumstances out of which that painting came to us. So I mean, I don't think I'm special in admiring it, but I do think you might think, well, you totally a fanboy of Van Gogh, you like everything he does. No, I actually don't like by far the majority of his paintings. And so I'm relieved when he paints something that is actually worth something. He did, that's true. Josie says, I love the harvest, it shows depth so well. Mel says, harvest is a gem. It certainly is. It is really well done. You just sort of wonder, where was he and what was he doing before he did that? Okay, then he says, and the days when I bring home a study, I say to myself, if it was like this every day, we might be able to get on. But the days when you come back empty-handed and eat and sleep and spend money all the same, you don't think much of yourself and you feel like a fool and a shirker and a good for nothing. And dear Dr. Ox, I mean, our Swede Mourier, it's actually a Dane, I'm rather fond of him because he goes ingenuously and benignly around this wretched world with his spectacles, and because I credit him with a more virgin heart than most, and with even more inclination to honesty than many a scoundrel has. And knowing that he has not been painting long, I do not care a bit that his work is the acme of fortuitousness. Really not quite sure what that means. What do you think that means? His work is the acme. Does he not mean acne with an N? Like the acne of like a teenager. Fortuitousness. What's fortuitous? Fatuousness. I'm going to have to look that up. Fatuous. It's not a word I've seen in a long time. Fatuous means the quality of being stupid, not correct, or not carefully thought about. Example, with astonishing fatuousness, he defended his actions. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so there you go. Anyway, it says, and I saw him every day for several months. Well, what can be the reason for his losing those qualities? This is what I think. He came to the South to recover from a nervous illness caused by a lot of worry he has had, on account of which he changed his career. He was perfectly well here. He was very even-tempered, but the shock of Paris has been too much. The change too sudden. He has not found the Paris of his dreams, and so he's restless and perhaps disagreeable, and anyway making an ass of himself. He will soon get over his mental measles, I hope. Meanwhile, let him do what he likes without feeling that it matters. He counts a lot on Russell, I think. I think he wants an advisor and a master, and it's no good telling him that Russell may not be everything that he needs. Not quite sure what he means here, because he obviously knows this person better than we do, and it's his opinion on another person. Anyway, he says, I think that Russell will see that there's somebody who does not know the surroundings he has to deal with, and I think that Russell would take him seriously and will try to be good to him. I think Russell is getting a reputation among those who are instinctively afraid of Paris. Now, what I find quite sort of strange with his letters, certainly at this point, is he writes quite a lot in his letters not about his painting. It's quite strange. Like in all the letters we dealt with in Newnan and in Antwerp, he talks incessantly about his art. Now he's not talking about his art in a direct way. I won't say whatsoever, but very little. And somehow his art is a lot better. And so you sort of wonder, is that the mark of an amateur, someone who talks about creating something? And is the mark of a master someone who doesn't need to really talk about it? It's just quite an interesting point, I think. Yeah, that is the harvest behind me. Actually, I think is the harvest. Which one is the harvest? That's. I was just wondering if it might be that one, but that's just haystacks. Now, harvest is this one, and there's Montmayor in the background. I've actually been there. It's kind of on a perched on a hill, and then I've also cycled. That's Montmayor Abbey over there, and then I've actually cycled over this mountain range. Saint-Remy, where the asylum is just on the other side here. About around about 20, 25, 30 kilometers from all. Timmy, what do you want to do? Hmm? Hmm? What do you want to do? Are you comfy? Hmm? Okay, I'm actually going to take him for a shave tomorrow. Okay, sorry, where was I? This is quite a long letter. So here he says, I think that Russell will see that here's somebody who does not know the surroundings he has to deal with. I think Russell is getting a reputation among those who are instinctively afraid of Paris. It's difficult to explain what I mean by that. Russell is such a good fellow, but you can't, that one can't order or force people to like Paris any more than one can recommend that they take a pipe or black coffee with their brandy. You can imagine that he probably does. Then Russell is rich and has lost money in Paris, so he can and does say to people, that's what I've been up against. But anyway, I'm going to write a short note to Russell. It appears that McKnight, that's the American, was not very pleased with me, but that Russell told him in reply that he should hold his tongue. So can you see there's quite a lot of chatter amongst the artists. The artists are collectively, it's not just Van Gogh, collectively struggling to um, emerge and to become something within this strange competitive element of photography. The fact that you can now just take a black and white photo of someone and black and white photos of whatever means that the artist's work is definitely becoming, whereas once it was preeminent, or it wasn't really preeminent, it was basically that's what you had to make do with. That's all there was. Now there's photographs, there are magazines. So I mean, just think about that. There was a time when all you could look at was paintings, right? There was no television, no internet, no magazines, no newspapers. So all you could really look at was paintings, right? Now in this time, late 1880s, now you can read books. So I'm just saying, even prior to books, all that people could look at besides the landscape was paintings. But now they can look at literary magazines had been invented, posters and pamphlets and photos and newspapers due to the printing press, books as well. And so all the eyeballs already being, what's the word, diverted. And it's the same problem journalists had with print media and the internet. Oh no, eyeballs are going to be diverted. What are we going to do? That's the kind of issue that artists were facing. How can we get eyeballs back onto our art? And the answer was liven it up. Give it color, put some action into it. Do something shocking. Like just let's and that's it's in that milieu that Starry Night came about. So it wasn't like just accidental; it was deliberate, right? Uh, I don't know if that's true. It's an interesting point. Was Paul Gogh the only person who hated hearing Vincent share his thoughts and feelings? Well, I don't think his parents could really put up with him. So they literally had him living, I think, in the shed. And he still said that they treated him like a shaggy dog. Theo even said he's an incredibly selfish guy. So I mean, he was full of compliments, but also he could be terribly hard to live with. Dr. Gachet and him had a falling out as well. He had a falling out with Teerstig. He had a falling out with Mauve. He had a falling out with was it Raysdale? I don't know. Where I think is it Van? Let me just make sure. Over the potato eaters. I think is it Van Race? I think it's Van Raysdale. But anyway, they argued literally over the potato eaters and well, they don't seem to be friends anymore. Certainly not at this point. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. What do you guys say? Cash says my art history is rubbish. Can you remember who that guy was that? Yeah, Stephanie says I think Vincent was just a bit long-winded. It's because he was always on his own. So when he spoke to someone, it could be quite overwhelming. And I think if he spoke to someone and he was drunk, it could be extremely overwhelming. Can you guys remember? Let me just do another Google search. Potato eaters. Just want to make sure. Oh, it's Van Rappard. Okay, I don't know why I couldn't remember. Van Rappard. So Van Rappard and him, yeah, they were pretty hectic loggerheads. Let's just see if there's any reference to that here. It's quite an interesting question that you brought up. This is from the Smithsonian. Let's just see if it comes up here. There's the potato eaters. So here he says, you can do better than this, wrote Anton van Rappard, right? And that led to some, Vincent basically said, take that back. Take that back. You can't possibly mean that. And then you have the rest of that here. So anyway, if you're interested in that whole backstory, some of you probably remember it. I'm not going to go through it here, but it's Van Rappard. Yvonne makes a really good comment. I think it's true that he could even argue with himself. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. Okay. All this is to tell you that I thoroughly understand, since he has turned out to be like this, why you are not getting along with the Swede. So it looks like Theo isn't. And again, it's not the Swede, it's the Dane. But anyway, who probably, judging by what you write, is again suffering from his nervous disorders and is set on edge by Paris. Now, what I find so ironic and pathetic about this is, yeah, you have Van Gogh. Do you agree with me that right now there's nothing wrong with Van Gogh's mental health? Do you agree with me when I say that? His letters are lucid. His letters are make sense. His letters are logical. His letters are coherent. He's optimistic. There's nothing wrong with his mental health, right? Do you agree when I say that? And not only that, Van Gogh is providing a kind of diagnosis to another artist talking about his nervous disorders or his nervous anxiety, right? Right now, at this point, it's not like, people will say that Van Gogh was a troubled artist his entire life, or that he had some disorder his entire life. Right now, and not only right now, going back months and going back even further, there's nothing wrong with his mental health. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. If anything, you could argue that is too positive given his long labor without any visible success. It's almost like, dude, you should be less optimistic. Stephanie says he's got his wits and talents, body and mind still illness, not progressing fast here. Lorraine says he's intact. Yeah. And that is the part that's really important to bear in mind is, so what, did he suddenly go mad in between now and 6 months? If he's in the asylum next year, did he suddenly go mad? 2 years later, when he died, did he? Oh, now he's a mad artist. So what are we actually talking about in terms of that? And I deal with 3 pillars in the Murder of Vincent van Gogh in my book. The one pillar is, did he cut off his ear? And all 3 of them are related. Did he cut off his ear? And then, okay, if he didn't, what happened? Was he mad? If not, what was going on with his psychology? And then the third one, how was he shot? Did he shoot himself or did someone else shoot him? If he didn't shoot himself, then what happened? And all 3 of them go kind of hand in hand. And I remember when I wrote this book, I didn't know, the book wasn't titled The Murder of Vincent van Gogh when I wrote it. I just thought, I'm going to deal with each of these 3, and I wonder if I can disprove at least one of them. So I thought, I've got an idea that one of the 3 pillars that the art history have concocted in the Van Gogh story, one of them I think is a bit rickety and maybe needs to be kicked in and needs to be reconsidered. That was honestly because I came in not knowing Van Gogh that well, right? And so I thought, yeah, one of them, maybe he wasn't mentally ill, he had something else, and then it ended up being, just based on my analysis, he didn't cut off his ear, he wasn't mentally ill, and he didn't take his own life. All 3 of them. No one was more surprised than me, because I'd been led to believe all of those 3 things. And it was when I watched Loving Vincent, as a true crime person, I recognized the true crime element in that, and I thought, something doesn't seem right here. Let me investigate this. And as I say, I thought maybe I'll prove or make a case for one of the 3, maybe 2 of the 3. And I was really shocked that I was actually able to make a really strong case for 3 of those 3 pillars, basically saying that the 3 pillars that the modern story of Van Gogh is based on, all 3 of them are incorrect. So I was really surprised by that. That is somewhat true. Syphilis is a very big aspect. Stephanie says, get your copy here. Jody's reading my book right now. I think I must keep that comment up there for 5 or 10 minutes. She says, yeah, so where are you in the book right now? You're halfway, third, 3/4. How far are you? Zircon says you came to a logical solution. Okay, hope so. Stephanie says, I'm reading it as well. Are you reading it the first time or second time? As far as I know, you've left a review, so it must be your second time. Oh, you've got it now in paperback. Okay, wow. Page 181 of how many? How many pages? Let me quickly check that. So since we are doing a bit of self promotion, yeah, is the book. It's quite well reviewed. One of my best reviewed books of all the books I've written. Jodie says she's on page 181. Well, there are 252 pages, so about 71 pages to go, right? So she's still got a way to go yet. You say you're enjoying it, so it's available in Kindle and paperback. I still need to do the audiobook version, so I'll try and get to that. Okay, let's get back to the letters. But the point I was making earlier is just, can you see how absurd the whole mental health thing is? Because right now is running so much on all cylinders that he's arranging other artists' lives and interrogating their mental health and what they need to do, kind of thing. And also his art is really on the ball. So again, the question comes up, what happens between now and the end of the year? And all those ingredients do matter. And the question is, how much of each one? Is he lonely? Yes. Does he start drinking absinthe? Yes. Does he go to brothels? Yes. Does Paul Gogh have a bad influence on him? Yes. Is he incredibly lonely that Paul Gogh, when he comes there, has a much worse influence on him than if he wasn't very lonely? Yes. Does Paul Gogh lead him to drink far more absinthe than he otherwise would? Probably yes. Remember, Paul Gogh is coming from Brittany, but he's also coming from a place of depression. He's been saying that he's depressed. So a depressed dude is coming into Vincent's space, and they are totally incompatible. And now it's not only lonely, you're living with kind of a toxic person with you. It's just a very horrible place where it's like, I'm really lonely, but I don't like you, but please don't leave, and then you argue that, it's that kind of situation. Okay, so let's continue. The other thing just to note here is that financially, there's not a problem. Like the reason the art experts give that Van Gogh took his own life is that he felt that he was a burden to Theo. Well, not here. I mean, he was so not a burden to Theo that he was like, do you mind if I have another guy come stay with me, and do you mind paying for that? No, it's fine. Okay. So the reason Van Gogh did that was because he thought he would be a burden. Well, he's being a huge burden right now. That's not strictly speaking true. It's starting to filter through that he may have been accidentally killed. That's the version from Knife and Smith. You can read the book Van Gogh, The Life. I don't know if it can come up here. I'm not sure if it's... Oh, here's a book about Joe Van Gogh Bonga. I'm not sure if they're going to show over here the other books about Van Gogh. Let's just see if it'll come up. Looking for Van Gogh, The Life. Don't see it. It should be here. I can't really type because Timmy is on my one hand, but maybe I can quickly do something. Just give me a second. I think that's the title. Okay, yeah. So if you want to read a really good, or you could listen to the audiobook from Knife and Smith. I think they previously Pulitzer Prize winning authors of Jackson Pollock. So these guys are pretty highly regarded. So you can get the audiobook. It's in paperback or Kindle. There you can actually buy the letters of Van Gogh. There's another one. But basically, what do you want me to put here? The paperback version. So this is a really good book. You can see it's rated 4.6 out of 5. If you're interested, I'll put that link in. I just have to say, as a true crime writer, I thought their scenario was very weakly expressed, very um, reductionist and incomplete. So the true crime aspect to it, I thought was quite poor, and I guess that's ultimately why I wrote my books. I thought this book comes close. We need a book that goes that last mile. Okay. Okay, so let's get back to this. He says, if he had money to waste by taking a studio a la Jerome, it would be serious, seeing that I rather imagine he hasn't a great deal to waste. He will be in for some censure, and my word, he rather deserves it. He will be in, nothing can be done if he won't listen, but he must not stay on. I'm not writing to Gogh direct, but he will send a letter to you because, in any case, we had better sit tight. If we say nothing more, if the reply shows that we have made such and such a proposal, but that there must be some initiative on his side too, then, excuse me, then we can see if he's, excuse me, I think the coffee is like, then we can see if he's keen on it. So at this point, they are trying to determine what Gogh wants to do. Is he keen or isn't he? So what we want to see now is a letter from Gogh. Guys, this is what's going on. And it's probably going to be, can you send me a little bit of money? I'm thinking about it, but maybe if you send me some money, then I can start really thinking about it. Anyway, he says if he's not keen on it, if it's all the same to him, if he has something else in mind, let him remain independent and me too. With a handshake for you and Moria, ever yours, Vincent. Then this postscript, what I'm inclined to think particularly strange in Gauguin's plan is this. The society gives its protection in exchange for 10 pictures, which the artists have to give. If the artist did this, this Jew society would pocket a good 100 pictures to begin with. Pretty dear, this protection by society which doesn't even exist. I don't really know what that's all about. I'm not quite sure what he's actually saying. I'm not quite sure what he's really getting at. It seems almost as though he doesn't quite believe what he's being told. So this is where we start seeing recognizable Van Gogh art, art that is today really worth millions. Not that his earlier art isn't, but this is in particular. So have a look at this. This is uh, not a terribly good painting, but this is recognizably all Bridget Trinquetal. So this is very close to the Yellow House as well. This is the Rhone. So he also painted Starry Night over the Rhone. Remember, I said that I also stayed on the other side of the Rhone, somewhere down here, and the Langlois Bridge is also somewhere down here. You can also kind of see the lamps. They don't have electricity at this time, and so the lamp lights that they have in modern all look a little bit like that. Obviously, they're electrified. But that's quite an interesting artwork. Look how yellow it is. Look how yellow the sky is. Some sailboats over here as well. And then this gives you an idea that Gogh isn't bad. Like he may be a rotten person, but his art's pretty. There's something about his art that is definitely what's the word? It does speak to you. It does speak about a certain um, abundance in terms of the human condition, in terms of his choice of color and his choice of proportion. His pictures are very cerebral. there's a lot more space and calmness in his pictures than in Van Gogh's, right? And then this is a very famous picture of Van Gogh. It evokes that period when he was when he was going to become a pastor. So this is kind of a parable in terms of art. It's kind of a art as religion type picture. And I think he's channeling Millet in this particular execution. Can you see how there's energy imbued in this landscape? That sun is alive. That's not just a small ball of white light in a blue sky, static. That is a throbbing, pulsating, energized, exploding ball of yellow energy, right? And it seems even like the ground is alive, right? That is a scene you can animate, whereas this isn't. This isn't a scene you could really animate. Or put it this way, the one scene lends itself to animation, the other, if you did, it would be like, okay, well, there are figures moving around, so what? Anyway, it says, when I sit down, hold on, let's start at the beginning. So, my dear Russell, for ever so long I've wanted to write to you, but then the work has so taken me up. We have harvest time here at present, and I'm always in the fields. So that tells you where he is and why he is where he is. And when I sit down to write, I'm so abstracted by recollection of what I've seen that I leave the letter. For instance, at the present occasion, I was writing to you and I was going to say something about Arles as it is, and it was in the old days of Boccaccio. Let's see if we can see who that is very quickly. Funny enough, there's a article in the New Yorker about Boccaccio. It's an Italian writer, poet, and Renaissance humanist. So that's the article in the New Yorker. Can't access it on this computer, but there it is. If you guys want to check it out, I'll put it in chat. Here's a little bit more about him. One of the most important figures in the European literary panorama of the 14th century. Just shows you how, what's the word, how educated Van Gogh is. I mean, how many 14th century writers do you know? So I'm not going to say too much more about that. Boccaccio and others fleeing the plague. Okay. Anyway, so that's what that reference is all about. If you want to read about it, here it is. Okay. Let's go back to the letter. Instead of continuing the letter, I began to draw on the very paper the head of the dirty little girl I saw this afternoon. That must be this piece. While I was painting a view of the river with a greenish yellow sky. The dirty mudlark, I thought, yet had a vague Florentine sort of figure like the heads of the Monticelli pictures. And reasoning and drawing this wise, I worked on the letter I was writing to you. I enclosed the slip of scribbling that you may judge of my abstractions and forgive my not writing before as such. Do not, however, imagine I am painting old Florentine scenery. No, I may dream of such. But I spend my time in painting and drawing landscapes, or rather studies of color. The actual inhabitants of this country often remind me of the figures we see in Zola's work, and Manet would like them as they are and the city as it is. Bernard is still in Brittany, and I believe he's working hard and doing well. Gogh is in Brittany too, but has again suffered of an attack of his liver complaint. I don't know if that's got to do with syphilis or with alcoholism or both, but I don't know if you guys know, Gogh also died of syphilis. Some people dispute that. but I believe that he had it pretty badly. Also believe that he drank a lot. Is a real womanizer, and so I think this liver issue is possibly due to drinking or syphilis or both. My brother has an exhibition of 10 new pictures by Claude Monet. His latest works, for instance, a landscape with a red sunset and a group of dark fir trees by the seaside. It's unfortunate that I don't actually have a link to that picture here. The red sun casts an orange or blood red reflection on the blue-green trees and the ground. I wish I could see them. Incidentally, right now in Paris, the Eiffel Tower is being constructed for the World Fair, which would be opening a little bit before this time in the following year in 1889. So quite a lot is happening in France at this time. How is your house in Brittany getting on, and have you been working in the country? I believe my brother's also another picture by Gogh, which is, as I heard say, very fine. Two Negro women talking. It is one of those he did at Martinique. McKnight told me I'd seen at Marseille a picture by Monticelli, a flower piece. Very soon I intend sending over some studies to Paris, and then you can, if you like, choose one for our exchange. I must hurry off this letter, for I feel some more abstractions coming on, and if I did not quickly fill up my paper, I would again set to drawing, and you would not have your letter. What is really nice about this letter is you get a sense that he is starting to get very what's the word? He's starting to get very caught up in his art. He's starting to become very immersed in his work. So Silent Murmur says that I think Gauguin is sadistic. Well, what a lot of people don't know is after Van Gogh, after the ear incident, Gauguin basically left town like the next day, like he was gone the next day. It is not an exaggeration today, sorry, to say that Van Gogh nearly died. He nearly bled to death. That's no exaggeration. So, what kind of friend abandons his friend at such a time of need? And can you imagine how Van Gogh felt? Jeepers, where were you, kind of thing. And then guess what happened? Gauguin went to Paris, and the first thing he did in Paris was he attended an execution, and he apparently wrote about it. So he goes from this one bloody incident to another incident in Paris, and he wanted to stand right in front and see this, the execution with a guillotine. And then he actually made a sculpture, which, let me see if I can show it to you. And all of that does make you wonder, is this guy quite a sadist? I think it's this. Can't seem to quite find it. Is it jar or jug? Maybe it's jug. Yeah, it's this one. So as far as I know, after he attended this guillotining, he made this portrait, and it's actually a, I don't know if you might call it a. It's not a portrait. It's a sculpture, but it's a it's a sculpture that's supposedly a self-portrait, but that could also be Vincent van Gogh. I don't know, but yeah, he's actually drinking out of a head of someone that seems to be bleeding. Now, isn't that quite sadistic? Can you see that that's supposed to be blood, I guess, right? And so, yeah, you hear about the whole ear incident, and then so I don't know if this is a self-portrait, because he says Gauguin portrays himself with closed eyes and a severed ear. So who is this really? Is this really a self-portrait, or is it a portrait of, and then he's drinking out of this head? I mean, or someone is. So I don't know if that answers your question about is he sadistic. Do you think it does? Anyway, if you want to read about that, I'll put that in chat as well. Okay. I heard Rodin has a beautiful head at the salon. I have been to the seaside for a week and very likely I'm going thither again soon. Flat, short sands, fine figures. There were like Samabu, straight, stylish. And working at a sower. The great field all violet and the sky and sun very yellow. It is a hard subject to treat. Please remember me very kindly to Mrs. Russell, and in thought I heartily shake hands. Yours very truly, Vincent. And there is the as kind of a sample of the picture. He actually puts a sketch of the sower in the picture to Russell, and that is the picture that is actually referring to. Okay, let's go on to the next letter. 18th June. Dear Bernard, forgive me for writing in haste. I'm afraid my letter will be illegible, but I did want to write at once. Do you realize that we have been very stupid, Gogh, you and I, in not going to the same place? But when Gogh left, I still wasn't sure if I could get away. And when you left, that awful money business and the bad reports I sent you about the cost of living here stopped you from coming. It wouldn't have been such a stupid thing to do if we had all gone to Old together. For with three of us here, we could have done our own housekeeping. And now that I've found my bearings a bit more, I'm beginning to discover the advantages. Do you remember I showed you that picture of, it appeared to be Van Gogh, Gauguin, Koenig, and Bernard, right? And then two other gentlemen. Remember that picture? Now he says, for my part, I'm getting on better here than I did in the north. I even work right in the middle of the day in the full sun with no shade at all out in the wheat fields. And lo and behold, I'm as happy as a cicada. I actually think the sun is good for him. I think he's getting vitamin D. He's getting exercise. And he's probably sleeping properly. So it's actually a very good recipe. He's getting fresh air, sunshine, and then that probably creates a bit of an appetite. And then at night he sleeps well. So that's quite a good thing. That's quite a good. That's quite a good question. It's quite a good question. Right. It's like who called 911, right? Then he says, my God, if only I'd known this country at 25 instead of coming at 35. At that time, I was fascinated by grey. And haven't I been saying that? Haven't we been seeing that? It's like, please, enough with the love affair with excrement. Please, let's move on, right? At last, he's realized, wow, there's a color such as yellow. Wow, okay. And so he says, I was fascinated by gray, or rather lack of color. At last, that penny has dropped, right? I keep dreaming of Malay, and then I also have such acquaintances among the Dutch painters as Mauve, Israels, etc. Here's a sketch of a sower, a large piece of land with clods of plowed earth, for the most part a definite purple, a field of ripe wheat in yellow ochre with a little carmine. The sky chrome yellow, almost as bright as the sun itself, which is chrome yellow 1 with a little white, while the rest of the sky is chrome yellow 1 and 2 mixed, thus very yellow. The sower's smock is blue and his trousers white, size 25 canvas, square. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. There are many touches of yellow in the soil, neutral tones produced by mixing purple with the yellow, but I couldn't care less what the colors are in reality. That's an important statement, right? Is saying I'm creating this landscape, although I'm painting it in plein air, although I'm painting it directly, I'm also interpreting the landscape almost, I suppose you could say, emotionally. I'm trying to imbue the landscape with feeling with intensity. Okay. I'd sooner do those naive pictures out of old almanacs, old farmers' almanacs, where hail, snow, rain, or fine weather are depicted in a wholly primitive manner, like the one Anquetin used so successfully in his Moisson. See if we can quickly see that. Shouldn't be too hard. I'm not sure if this is what it is. I think this is what it is. It does kind of ring a bell, doesn't it? So this is the painting is referring to. Just try and just blow it up a little. And it does kind of ring a bell. Look at the picture behind me, and look at the picture that you see over here. It is kind of similar, isn't it? Kind of layers, kind of geometric, right? Okay. To be honest with you, I have absolutely no objection to the countryside since I grew up in it, and I'm still enchanted by snatches of the past, have a hankering after the eternal, of which the sower and the sheaf of corn are the symbols. This is very important. This is a very important statement he's making. He's saying, I am painting symbolically. I'm not just painting a harvest, I'm painting something that speaks to the human condition. The other thing that I think is very interesting is, let me just bring myself back a little, is he's a country bumpkin who arrives in Paris. You know, he wants to be in Paris. He wants to be away from home. He doesn't want to be like a mommy's boy or whatever. And then he goes to Paris, and then he tires of the big city, tires of the buildings. In the beginning, he enjoys it, but later on he tires of that, and then he ends up going back to the country, right? And if you think about it, this idea that art is supposed to be progressive, art takes you into a new psychology in a way. Well, in a way, what he does is he regresses from it. In other words, this is a period of industrialization. And if you look behind me, while he's painting kind of wagons and farm scenes, when the Eiffel Tower is being erected. So it's a kind of psychological regression in a sense. Meanwhile, the color, the hyper real, no, that's the wrong word, the expressionistic color is modern. So that's the part that is different. In other words, it's almost like he's reinterpreting the original landscape, the dishwasher gray Dutch landscape, the old dour, shaded, shadowed, dark, gloomy, waterlogged landscape is now sun-drenched and vibrant and more lively than it's ever been. So can you see how, although it is a kind of psychological regression, he somehow transmutes it in a way? Do you see that? Do you follow what I'm talking about? So I'm just saying he goes into a more modern urban fabric, only to reject that, to go back into the countryside, but then he reinvents the countryside in a way that's modern as well, in that sense, right? Okay, I just find that quite interesting, that he is really thinking about what he's doing. He says, but when shall I ever get round to doing the starry sky, that picture which is always in my mind? I don't know, got goose pimples just reading that. Right? That's an incredible thing he's saying. This statement predates Starry Night, by around about a year. I think it's just less than a year. So here he says, when will I ever get round to doing the starry sky? That picture that is always in my mind. So he's got this idea in his mind already, the sparkling idea in his mind, but he can't give substance to it. And I kind of know what he's talking about, where I sometimes want to, there were pictures when I was a kid, pictures I wanted to draw that I just felt there's no way, I don't have the skill to do it. But I've also had that thing, there are books I want to write, like Once Upon a Time, this book. There are books I want to write, there are videos I want to make. I mean, the video I wanted to make on Magellan and the video that I did make are still, it's nowhere near the kind of thing I would have liked to have done. And so that's what he's dealing with. It's like, I've got this vision in my mind. I'm not ready to execute it yet. And then he does sort of practice. He practices, I guess, that vision with Starry Night of the Road. And then the next one is the lesson to learn out of that whole thing is, don't wait till you're ready. Just start doing it. And I must say, I don't really like that. I sort of feel like if it's not perfect, I don't want to do it. But if you want to get to perfection, or you want to get to something that's just good, you need to produce some bad stuff, some embarrassingly bad stuff. And every successive iteration is an improvement. And yeah, and hopefully you get where you need to be going. Anyway, it says, alas, alas, it is just the excellent fellow Cyprian that says in J.K. Huysman's En Menage, the most beautiful paintings are those which you dream about when you lie in bed smoking a pipe, but which you never paint. I often feel like that about photography. The most beautiful photos are the photos you don't take, because you've just turned the corner in a road, or a bird flies up, or the butterfly abandons the flower. The most beautiful photos are those that you don't take. I think I'm going to make that the title of this video. Don't you agree that that's a very, very good, it's a better title than the one I've got? Yeah, Lamtoon says, you've got to produce those poo-poo pieces. Yeah, you do. Do you guys agree that this is a better title? Well, I hope you're saying yes, because I'm going to change it. And I've got just enough space to do it. Elise says, I like the title. Okay, rewind. Thanks, Cornelia. Thanks for your feedback. Okay, let's continue. Yet you have to make a start, no matter how incompetent you feel in the face of inexpressible perfection. Yeah, well, that's exactly what I just said. You've got to start somewhere. You can't run. You can't run before you can walk. You can't fly before you can run. In a sense. And so, yeah, you've got to start somewhere. He says, how I should like to see the study you have done of the brothel. So guess what Bernard's up to? I'm always reproaching myself for not having done any figures here yet. Well, in a way, that's probably a good thing, because it's saving him money, and it's also keeping his health in check. So that's another thing, that when that starts happening, you can expect a bit of a downward spiral. Yeah, with another landscape, setting sun, rising moon, a summer evening anyway. Town purple, celestial body yellow, sky green blue. The wheat is all the hues of old gold, copper, green gold or red gold, yellow bronze, red green, size 30 canvas square. I painted it at the height of the mistral. So again, you see how the wind is a factor. I've been saying it from the beginning that I believe the wind really inspired him to create that motion in the landscape. And that's not something I can say I've read or heard anywhere. Maybe it has been, but I haven't really heard it. In the same way that I haven't heard them say before recently that smoke inspired Monet. You wouldn't think so. My easel was fixed in the ground with iron pegs, a method I recommend to you. You push the legs of the easel deep into the ground, then drive iron pegs 50 centimeters long into the ground beside them. See above sketch. So I guess that's the sketch. Is that okay? So I guess that's where, I guess that's the part of the peg that he's trying to illustrate down there, near the bottom, you see over there. And then this is one of the recent pictures. Can you see it's overwhelmingly yellow? Basically a heck of a lot of yellow, and then just that little bit of strip of civilization. Not quite sure what's going on here. It's almost like he's put the sky between there and there. I don't quite like that piece, but it's definitely interesting. Quite a big sun as well. If you ask me, I would say, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I would say that is the Colosseum here. And then that is the part going around. But I would say that the Colosseum is in this area. It could also be here. That could also be the Colosseum. I know it's got a big squarish aspect to it. So actually looking at this, that looks more likely to be the Colosseum. Do you remember when I showed you a photo of it, I said there was like a structure like that? Well, that could be the view from the Colosseum of this building. Yeah. I think that could be the Colosseum over there. But you can see it's one of the highest buildings on the skyline. And what's the other thing I wanted to mention here? Oh, there's a windmill to the one side. It looks like a Dutch windmill over there. That's not something you would see today in all, that windmill. And it's France, so it's not something you would expect to see in France either. Okay. Do you hear the thunder rumbling? Okay, so let's try and get to the end of this letter. He says, you tie the whole lot together with a rope. This way you can work in the wind. So can you see the wind is a very real factor in his painting? He's painting in like a gale, is painting with the wind causing the canvas to shake. He's painting, seeing the grass move like this. He's painting with the trees going like that. It was real for him when he was there. It was real for me when I was there. The Mistral in awe is a very real, it's a very real part of the personality of the place. Hey, Timmy. Hey, it is real. Okay. Okay, he says, this is what I wanted to say about black and white. Take the sower. The picture is divided in two. One half is yellow, the upper half. One half is yellow, the lower part is purple. Well, the white trousers help rest the eye and distract it just as the excessive contrast of yellow and purple starts to jar. There you are. That's what I wanted to say. I know a second lieutenant in the Zouaves here. I think the Zouaves are kind of, I think they're soldiers. Let me make sure. I think we see a picture of them in the next thing. Yeah, so that's right. Okay, so it says here, the Zouaves were a class of light infantry of the French army serving between 1930 and 1962. And so that's kind of what they look like. They kind of have a red hats and sort of red and blue in their uniform, right? See if we can see some more. That's their kind of uniform. (1912). So there's quite a lot of blue and red in their uniform. It must be pretty hot wearing that kind of attire. Anyway, so that's what that is. He says his name is Millier. I give him drawing lessons with my perspective frame, and he's beginning to do some drawings, and honestly I've seen far worse. He's keen to learn, has been in Tonkin, etc. He's leaving for Africa in October. If you were to join the Zouaves, that particular unit, he would take you along and guarantee you a fairly large measure of freedom to paint. So it's like Bernard is like a painting soldier, French soldier. At least if you were willing to help him with his artistic plans, might this be of any use to you? If so, let me know as soon as possible. One reason for working is that the canvases are worth money. Since you doubt that, you may call this reason fairly prosaic, but it is true. One reason for not working is that canvases and paint simply swallow up our money while they are waiting to be sold. Drawings, on the other hand, don't cost a lot. Gogh is too bored at Ponthaven, complains just like you of his isolation. So quite a few artists feeling a bit lonely. If only you could go and see him, but I haven't any idea whether he means to stay. So he's not telling Vincent kind of what his intentions are. I'm inclined to think he's planning to go to Paris. He told me he thought you would come to Ponthaven. My God, if only all three of us were here. What do you think would happen if that were the case? You will say that it's too out of the way. Oh, all right, but think of the winter. For here you can work all year round. The reason why I love this country is that I have less to fear from the cold, which, because it stops my blood circulating properly, makes it impossible for me to think or even do anything at all. So there's another very important insight into Van Gogh, is that he struggles physically and also kind of emotionally, or mentally, maybe is a better word, in winter. Yeah, he says, in winter, it makes it impossible for me to think. So if that's the case, why, and he is the reason why something happened to him, why did he not die in winter? Why did he not endure this low in winter? You will see that for yourself when you are a soldier, then your melancholy will be gone. In other words, he's saying the weather in France really lifts me up. He says that would easily be the result of your having too little or the wrong blood, which I don't really think is the case. It's the fault of that damned foul wine in Paris and those foul greasy steaks. My God, I'd reached a point where my blood was no longer circulating at all, literally no longer at all. But after 4 weeks, it has started to circulate again. So can you see here he is diagnosing himself as basically healthy, and is kind of seems to be in a supportive role, not only to Gogh but to Bernard as well, to say, come here, things are great here, things are great with me here, come here, right? Okay, so he goes on to say, however, my dear friend, at the same time, I've had, just like you, because he says, I've had a fit of melancholy from which I would have suffered as much as you had I not welcomed it with great pleasure as a sign that I was recovering, which is indeed what happened. So this is how he dealt with not feeling terribly happy. As he said, I'm so glad I'm depressed, it means my health is returning. I mean, isn't that a funny way of seeing the glass as half full? I'm so glad I'm miserable. It means that my health, I'm so glad that I realize that I'm not so happy. It means I'm healthy again. I'm healthy enough to know what my emotional state is. Kristen says, winter's been making me feel really bummed. We just entered spring, but it snowed again last night. Well, where I am, it is summer's running out. We in the, I think they call it the dog days of summer. We in the really the last gasp of summer. The weather here is like, you've sometimes got to decide, should I be wearing a t-shirt? I mean, right now I'm sitting in shorts there, shorts here. But if I take my dog for a walk, it's sort of like, it's a little bit too cold at the end of the day outside to be in shorts. Right now it is 15 degrees Celsius. Let's just see, convert Celsius. Let's just see what that is. Not quite sure. I think is it 60 something? 59. So right now it's 59. Obviously it's 1 o'clock in the morning, but it's 59 degrees Fahrenheit. Deborah says we in Australia are the same. Okay. Right now it's raining and thunder and lightning. Okay, so he says, okay, so yeah, he does actually very briefly acknowledge that he had a fit of melancholy. But can you see how lucid he is? You know, he's very eloquent and clear-minded and inspired and energized and all the rest. He says, so don't go back to Paris, but stay in the countryside, for you will need your strength to come through the trial of serving in Africa. Yeah, I think you will. Well, then the more blood you produce beforehand, good blood, the better it will be. For over there in the heat, you may not be able to do quite so easily. And have a look at that. Painting and fucking a lot don't go together. It softens the brain, which is a bloody nuisance. That's also a pretty incredible insight. Yvonne says we are 41 degrees. I take it it's F for Fahrenheit, not F for effing cold for Arizona. Okay. Carol says she's in Florida. Okay, but what a statement. Painting and fucking a lot don't go together. So he's even quite lucid about that. I need to paint a lot, so I can't do that a lot. And yes, it's a nuisance, right? Okay, so he says the symbol of St. Luke, the patron saint of painters, is, as you know, an ox. So you just be patient as an ox if you want to work in the artistic field. Still, bulls are lucky not to have to work at that foul business of painting. But what I want to say is this: after the period of melancholy is over, you will be stronger than before. You will recover your health, and you will find the scenery around you so beautiful that you'll want to do nothing but paint. And that, in a way, is a weird prediction for himself, because he's going to be quite unhappy and miserable and despairing in 1889. And then he says here, after that period of melancholy, you will be stronger than before. That's exactly what he is. When he goes to Orvers, he is stronger than before. He does recover his health. He does find the scenery so beautiful that he wants to do nothing but paint. Did you see that? So again, you say, so how on earth do these people say, oh, no, he was just on this downward spiral of mental health? They don't understand the actual psychology of Van Gogh. They just don't understand it. They've just like taken little snippets and reverse engineered it to what they think he did in any way. In other words, they're not trying to figure out who he is and trying to just follow the evidence. They're saying, well, we know what the end result is, so let's fill in the gaps on the way there. And that's how it's not the scout mindset. That's how you end up with, that is the definition of the soldier mindset. And that is why the story of Van Gogh is such a travesty. Christian says they don't get him, they just don't get him at all. Yeah. Well, what's quite interesting when you look at the earlier words in his letters, he actually talks about, when he refers to that, he talks about plowing a woman. So maybe that's more appropriate to his time. I don't know. Okay, anyway, so he goes on to say, I think that your poetry will change in the same way as your painting. So Bernard is a poet and a painter, not a very good painter or poet as far as I know. Anyway, he says, after a few eccentric things, you've succeeded in doing some with Egyptian calm and great simplicity. So this is, I think this is the poem he wrote that I'm not quite sure where this comes from, but he says, how short then the hour one spends in loving. It is less than an instant, little more than a dream. Time strips us of our enchantment. I think you know what that is a reference to. That's not, okay, so yeah, he says, that's not by Baudelaire. I don't know who wrote it. They're the words of a song found in Daudet's Nabab. That's where I took it from. But doesn't it express the idea, just like a shrug of the shoulders from a real lady? The other day I read Loti's Madame Chrysantheme, I'm not sure how to say it. It includes interesting details about Japan. My brother is holding a Claude Monet exhibition at the moment, which I should very much like to see. Guy de Maupassant, among others, came to have a look. Really? Wow, that's amazing. So this author actually came to Theo's home and attended this Claude Monet exhibition. That's quite something. And he said he'll be coming often to the Boulevard Montmartre in the future. I must go and paint, so I'll stop. I'll probably write again soon. 1,000 apologies for my not putting enough stamps on that letter, even though I stuck them on at the post office. Nor is this the first time that it has happened here, that being in doubt and inquiring at the counter, I've been given the wrong information about the postage. You have no idea of the indifference, the unconcern of the people here. I've got to say, I feel the same right where I am. The bit of the impasse that I find myself in, it's just like, I don't know, it's like people just seem cruel and extremely simple and extremely like living in a tiny corner of the universe. Yeah, I can't really put it in any other way. Small-hearted, small-minded people. And what can you do when you find yourself in that situation? Do you bake them a cake, or do you what do you do? Do you find somewhere else to live? Anyway, he says, anyway, you'll soon be seeing all that with your own eyes in Africa. Thanks for your letter. I hope to write again soon at a moment when I'm in less of a rush. With a handshake, Vincent. And I think the question that sort of comes up is, if he's in a place where the people are indifferent and the people are unconcerned, well, then where should he go? It's like this landscape is doing it for him as an artist, but the people don't like him. The people think that he's dirty and weird and I don't know. It's almost like he's an immigrant and we don't trust you. And they probably have some kind of moral, what's the word? That they have some kind of moral judgment on him. And so where should he go? And if he goes somewhere else, is it going to be any better? And so look at how these artists deal with the situation. Gogh completely leaves France. He goes to Tahiti. Was that the right decision? Maybe it was. Um, think about it like that. Where's an artist? If an artist is, um, isn't there a saying in the Bible, a prophet is not welcome in his own hometown or something like that? Just check that out. Yeah. So it's from Luke 4:24. Truly I tell you, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. And this is what Jesus said. Yeah, ain't that the truth? Anyway, so he says, there it is. There are the various versions. And I mean, if you take this back to Van Gogh, how unpopular was he in particular in his hometown, even in his own home? Him and his father really didn't get along. His mother doesn't seem to like him very much. His younger brother, seems almost estranged. You never hear from his younger brother. He seems to be a little bit in touch with one of his sisters. He's got quite a few sisters. So, you know what? I don't think you can dispute the fact that Van Gogh was, in a real sense, a prophet, just in terms of he was an art visionary. And so in his own home, they wanted to kick him out. Literally, his parents and the neighbors wanted to kick him out of Newnan, and ultimately sort of was. And now he's going to be in all, and the people in that town are literally going to want to try and kick him out. Why do you think that is? Why do you think people feel so offended, antagonized, intimidated, agitated, triggered by someone who has a different idea about life, about reality? Why do you think it's like that? Why is someone who is got a family, got a house, got a job, got the whole tutti, the whole thing of life in the suburbs. You've got everything that you want. So why are you threatened by someone that's kind of working constantly, that you just can't quite figure out? Why would that be a threat to you? Why do you think that is? And so a couple of you guys say, well, the outside appearance, because he goes against the norm, because he's different. And I think I know what the answer is. And the answer is that person is kind of a reminder that there's another way of living, that there's not just a predefined role to life. You can also have a kind of I think what it looks like to someone who's in a marriage or in a family. It looks like, wow, you have no morals, you have no compass, you don't belong to any system or rules, you are dangerous. I think that's how they see it. It's kind of like you represent disorder, chaos, moral decrepitude, and so you're a source of fear and of disorder in a way, right? Um, but I think what that person in a way represents, is symbolic of, is that there isn't just one way to live your life, which is you get married, you have kids, you have a job, you retire, and that's it. There's another way as well. You can be an artist. You can uh, make the world into your problem. In other words, you see the whole human condition as a problem to solve, and you try and solve that through thinking, through through a process of a psychological process, which you then transmit into paint, or you transmit into words, or you transmit into books as a way to address the human condition. And meanwhile, yes, the human condition around you basically saying, get this guy out of here. He's a fill in the blank, right? Thanks a lot, Kristen. So can you see how it's just like, because I'm not familiar with what's going on here, I fear you, and so I need to destroy you, right? Something's going on here that I can't control, and I don't know what's going on, so I need to get rid of it. It's giving me a bit of an existential crisis. And in a way, that's exactly what Van Gogh did want to do. He wanted to give you not so much, it's quite ironic. He didn't really want to undermine your existence to say, be afraid, I'm the boogeyman. He's literally trying to say, be soothed by this interpretation, this vivid interpretation of the world. He's trying to say, not to the rich people, just to ordinary people, trying to say the world is actually quite beautiful and full of life and full of vigor and full of energy, and feel soothed by that. Feel blessed and feel encouraged by the abundance and the exaltation of life. Feel the buzz and the glow and that sort of sizzling energy just of the landscape. You can just stand in the landscape with the wind blowing over it, and you can feel the energy, you know, buzzing off it, like throbbing off it. Just the sun is this incredible giver of life, and just feel that. Let the sun radiate its energy into you, and the sun does give life to plants. It also gives life to you. That's why you tend to get sick in the winter. And so that's the message he's trying to convey. Meanwhile, the people around him are like, how can we get rid of this guy? How can we destroy him? How can we kick him out of his home? Right? It's quite an irony. It's quite a tragic irony. So what I find very ironic now, and in 2019, when I went to the Netherlands and I went to France, was that in his time, everybody hated Vincent van Gogh. I'm talking about the locals, the people who didn't know him. I'm not talking about Theo. I'm talking about wherever he went, people treated him like the plague. People treated him like persona non grata, right? And I'm not saying he was Jesus walking on water, and I'm not saying he was some kind of saint, and I'm not saying that they were wrong to be a bit sniffy, you know, when he walked by. I'm simply saying that it's utter hypocrisy that now he's this great celebrated celebrity. It's like you go to Arles, and it's like everywhere in Arles is like, this is where Van Gogh did this is where Van Gogh did that, this is where but when he actually lived there, they wanted to kick him right out. It's just, and it's like, so when you live there, it's like, we don't want you here, you the dregs of humanity. After he died and he became famous kind of in absentia, it's like, Van Gogh was here and he did this over here. Everyone, come here. Yeah, Van Gogh is awesome. Total hypocrisy. The French hated Van Gogh when he was around. They didn't want to honor him in their church. They didn't want to bury him in their cemeteries. But when the sort of tourist dollars started streaming in, then it was suddenly a totally different song they were singing. Oh yeah, no, I actually saw Van Gogh and he stayed here. Don't you want to also come stay here? And you know what, Van Gogh, I actually remember he painted just around the corner. Yeah. And so it's like this total hypocrisy. So when he's actually living with you, you treat him like dirt. When he's dead, then he's this greatest hero, and oh no, he was so awesome. Great, thanks a lot. It is totally fucked up. It is totally fucked up. I'm not going to buy this junk art because look at what he looks like. After he's dead, oh no, now it's worth tens of millions, and every little thing that he wrote is now priceless. Well, couldn't you have seen that when this guy was alive? What is that? Why is there such poverty of the human condition where it's like, I don't really get who this guy is, let's just get rid of him? Where don't you like go somewhere along the line, what is this person actually doing? Maybe I could ask him, maybe I could find out, maybe I could spend a little bit of time figuring out what he's trying to do, and is it really, is what he's trying to do evil? What harm is he actually causing? Is he um, when he paints a field, does he like dig up big tracts of wheat, or does he sort of roll down the hill and he flattens all the wheat? Is he a danger to kind of the landscape? Like what is he actually doing that's so destructive? Or is it I'm not interested in art. There's a photographer. I'm on my way to him. Okay, there we go. Stephanie says, but I'd hang some of his artwork in my house. Are you talking about Van Gogh? I would as well. Some of it. In fact, I do have some of it. Okay, anyway, let me continue. Rant over. Well, we're almost at 2 hours. I really need to get through June. Anyway, so he says, you'll soon be seeing all that with your own eyes in Africa. Thanks for your letter. I hope to write again at a moment when I'm in less of a rush. With a handshake, Vincent. Can you see how and why, in some very real ways, I identify with Van Gogh? I mean, it's crazy in a way. Anyway, so now we're at 21st of June. This is where he paints one of those soldiers. And as I say, you can recognize them with the red hats. It's like red and blue. And so these are some of the dudes hanging out in Arles. That's also not bad. That's quite a good paint. That's quite a good portrait for a Van Gogh. Here's another one, seated Zouave. And that's about it. Okay, so he says, my dear Theo, I've just read Geoffrey's article on Claude Monet, and I presume that is like a newspaper or magazine article. What he says is really very good. I should so like to see that exhibition. The only way I can console myself for not seeing it is to look around and see so many things in nature that I hardly have time to think of anything else. For just now, it is harvest time. That is a big deal for him. When the harvest symbolizes some biblical concepts to him, but also something beyond that. The harvest symbolizes, you reap what you sow. It symbolizes. Let me just see what they actually say here. Harvest symbolism, Van Gogh. So their version here is that he saw plowing, sowing, and harvesting as symbolic to man's efforts to overwhelm the cycles of nature. Quite deep, right? The sower and the wheat sheaf stood for eternity, and the reaper and his scythe for irrevocable death. The dark hours conducive to germination and regeneration. And so he painted wheat fields over and over again. And so what he's seeing in the whole harvest is really kind of emblematic just of life and death. That life grows and reaches its conclusion, its zenith, and then it's reaped, it's cut, it's reaped, and then that's the end of that season. And that goes on over and over again. Winter comes and everything's dead, and then life grows, and then it reaches its zenith, its maximum, and then it's all cut down. And then, in a way, that is how a farmer measures his yield, the yield of his crop, but that's also how a man can be measured. When a man is harvested, you could say by God or by fate or by whatever, when not just a man, when men are harvested, perhaps in a war, or a generation is harvested, what have they achieved? Um, what has been produced in that time of growth, if anything? And so it's within this symbolism of growing and harvesting that Van Gogh, I think, is also thinking about, well, I'm growing I'm growing as an artist, I'm producing all these artworks, but who's harvesting my work while I'm alive? And so that's in a way, a reality that he's tortured with, right? Okay. And so that would be, so he's painted a lot of orchards, which I didn't think was a terribly good theme. He paints a lot of wheat fields, that becomes another theme. He paints wheat fields being harvested. He paints cypresses, that becomes another theme. I'm trying to think if there are themes beyond that. Yeah, wheat fields, cypresses, the sunflowers were also a theme. Okay, so he says, I have had a letter from Bernard who says that he's feeling very lonesome, but he's working all the same. Can you see how he's not afraid to say if something's bothering him? So if he's lonely, he says, I'm lonely. If he's melancholy, he says, I'm melancholy. It's not like he's can't communicate if something's bothering him. So that's another thing. If he supposedly killed himself, why didn't he just say, this is bothering me a lot? Why did he just forget to say that? I mean, you can see how long it's taking to get through all of his letters and how detailed they are and how much he reveals of himself. Why didn't he reveal that of himself in the last weeks and days of his life? Anyway, but that he is working all the same, Bernard, and has written a new poem on himself in which he makes fun of himself rather pathetically, and he asks, what's the use of working? And I think Van Gogh must find this quite, it resonates with him, because there must be a little part of him that's also thinking that. What's the use of me working if I'm not selling it? But yet he's able to answer that question. Only he asks that while he is working, he says that work is no earthly good at all while he is working, which is not at all the same thing as saying it when one is not working. I should very much like to see what he's doing. Let me just see that again. Only he asks that while he is working, he says that work is no earthly good at all. Work is no earthly good at all while he is working. So, yeah, his point is basically that when you're not working, the work that you've done may have some value. That I can see the value of. I mean, I've written 100 books. I know the value of that work means something in retrospect. Like, while I was writing some of those books, it was quite hard in a way to say, while I'm writing this, is it really justified? Whereas where I am now, I'm still not sure if it was totally justified, but it certainly, I'm glad that work is in the bank, if I can put it that way, that work is done and has served its purpose. So it might be a little bit like a farmer who plows the field, and it's a lot of work, and he sows the field, and it's a lot of work, and there's no return on that investment immediately. It's first got to rain, and those seeds have got to grow. And so in the initial stage of work, you might say, this is really not worth it. And that is normal and natural to say that. And then later on, when you're not working, when something happened as a result of that original work, then you do say, well, that was worth it after all. I'm curious to know what Gogh will do if Bernard does not go back to him at Ponthaven. I've given them each other's addresses up to now because they might need each other. I've had a week's hard, close work among the cornfields in the full sun. The result is some studies of cornfields, landscapes, and a sketch of a sower. This also gives you an idea that he's quite a tough guy. He can stand in the middle of the day, in the heat of the sun, in the middle of summer, and with the wind blowing a gale, and he can paint. That is quite a tough, resilient person. As much as he's got whatever physical ailment, he's actually a tough SOB, right? Tougher than average, I would say, a lot tougher than average. He says a plowed field, a big field with clods of violet earth climbing toward the horizon, a sower in blue and white. On the horizon, a field of short ripe corn. Over it all, a yellow sun, a yellow sky with a yellow sun. You can tell from this simple mentioning of the tones that it's a composition in which color plays a very important part. And color is playing a very important part now in his life. And it's quite interesting that when the color is acknowledged, when the color comes forth, his art takes on a whole new lease on life, and arguably so does he. Anyway, he says, and the sketch, such as it is, a size 25 canvas, torments me, making me wonder if I shouldn't attack it seriously and make a terrible picture of it. My Lord, how much would I like to do it? But I keep asking myself if I have vigor enough to carry it out. Such as it is, I'm putting the sketch to one side, hardly daring to think about it. I've been longing to do a sower for such a long time. So he's longing to do a sower, and he's been longing to do a night sky, stars in the night sky. And so I'm almost afraid of it. And yet, after Millet and Lermit, what still remains to be done is a sower in color and large size. Let's talk of something else. I have a model at last, a zouave, that's a soldier, a boy with a small face, a bull neck, and the eye of a tiger. And I began with one portrait and began again with another. The half length I did of him was horribly harsh. In a blue uniform, the blue of enamel saucepans, with braids of a faded reddish orange, and two yellow stars on his breast, an ordinary blue and very hard to do. That bronzed feline head of his with a red cap, I place it against a green door and the orange bricks of a wall. So it's a savage combination of incongruous tones, not easy to manage. The study I made of it seems to me very harsh, but all the same, I'd like always to be working on vulgar, even loud portraits like this. So can you see he's trying to be expressive, he's trying to be intense, he's trying to have the art shout out at you, right? He says, it teaches me something, and above all, that is what I want of my work. The second portrait will be the full length, sitting against a white wall. Let's have another look at that picture. And when you look at that picture and you look at the self-portrait he does, sans ear, you know, there's a bit of a similarity in it. There's also green in the background. I'm not quite sure I see the savageness that he's talking about. I mean, don't quite see that. I don't quite see the eye of the tiger either. I mean, this guy looks a bit sleepy to me. Is that eye of the tiger? And he doesn't look like a boy either, does he? So let's just go back to that. He says, the eye, it literally says the eye of a tiger. Sorry, I don't see that. I see the eye of a sleepy dude. Anyway, so he says, did you notice in the Dessins Raffaelli, the street, published lately in the Figaro, that's a French newspaper, Figaro. The main one, would you say, is the Place Clichy, with all its bustle. It's very much alive. Figaro is said to have published a number with whatever drawings. I forgot to tell you in my last letter that I received, it's a fortnight ago now, the consignment of paints from Tassay. Yeah, it doesn't look like a boy and doesn't seem terribly savage. Anyway, maybe when he painted it, he did that or something. Okay, so then he says, among the studies of wheat fields, there's one of the stacks of which I sent you the first sketch. We have had torrential rain these last 2 days. Funny enough, it's raining quite hard, been raining quite hard here now, which has gone on all day and will change the appearance of the fields. It came absolutely unexpectedly and suddenly while everyone was harvesting. They brought in a great part of the wheat just as it was. So there's a little bit of a glimpse into a little incident like that day. I'm hoping to go for a trip into the Camargue. You know, that's like where the horses of the Camargue are, next Friday with a veterinary surgeon. There are bulls there and wild white horses and pink flamingos too. I shouldn't be surprised if it was very beautiful. Can you see how full of life his life is? Can you see how full of life his life is at this point? He's meeting all sorts of people. He's not really establishing friendships, but he's nevertheless quite activated and engaged, and he's kind of on the ball, right? So that, again, the question comes up, how does all of this unravel between now and December? Because at this point, nothing's unraveling. At this point, he's sort of a burgeoning artist. Is increasing, is developing, is improving, right? So when do things start falling apart? Well, that's what we want to find out. And does it have something to do with this? So he says, I'm very curious to know what Gogh will do, but to risk persuading him to come, no, for I do not know if it would suit him. And perhaps when you consider his large family, so he's got like 7 children, which he ended up abandoning, it is more his duty to try to bring off something that would bring in enough to let him be the head of the family again. That's the irony with Van Gogh and Gauguin. Van Gogh doesn't have any kids, he's not married, so he's kind of allowed to try to be an artist. Paul Gauguin is a bit of a rogue. He abandons his wife, he abandons his kids, he ends up going to Tahiti, and he sort of kind of as a, I think it's like a common law marriage with like a 14-year-old. I mean, but he's literally had a family in France. He just abandons them. So you kind of can't help seeing Van Gogh as, for all his faults, is kind of a good guy. He's kind of a good guy artist who is sometimes a bit of a hedonist and sometimes a bit of a drunk, but also a very hardworking person who means well, who has the best interests of people in his heart and in his mind. Whereas Gauguin is far more of a arsehole, to put it plainly. But then he's also quite a brilliant artist as well. And so it's almost like 2 different roads to art. It's almost like Batman and the Joker. Gogh chooses the Joker road and gets success and fame and renown, and in fact gets it more easily. Van Gogh chooses the Batman route of just like painfully thinking things through and being very sober and being very hard on himself and being very dedicated and using all of his family's money to fight a sort of is kind of on a crusade to save humanity in a way, to address human concerns. And so what do you think it's like having Batman having the Joker live with him? Do you think that's a good thing? Anyway, he goes on to say, in any case, I certainly do not want to cramp anybody's individuality by any association. And if he is hankering after that plunge he mentioned, he may have good reason for it. and I should not like to deter him if he's really set on it, which remains to be seen. So already Gogh is keeping them guessing. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to join you? Am I not going to join you? I wonder what I'm going to do. Goodbye for the present, a handshake, and thank you for the paper, and good luck with your exhibition. Ever yours, Vincent. Once again, a postscript. What is old Tanguy doing? Have you seen him lately? I'm always glad to get paints from him, even if they are just a little worse than elsewhere, provided, however, they're not too expensive. Then looks like there's a second letter from the same day. Is it 21st of June? How long is this? Gee. Okay, here's the letter for Gogh. I know that there's the following passage in the letter. I insist that, supposing the capital is got together, or half of it got together, your brother will exert his powers to lead the enterprise to success and will be its director. I think these are Gogh's words. I know quite well that he also writes, in principle, I accept your proposition, but I think it would be going a bit too far if we did not firmly point out to him that our proposal was meant without all those special considerations, and that we ourselves are too short of money to be able to risk anything but living together and sharing the monthly money. So it seems like he wants an advance, or he wants some kind of a principal payment paid out, whereas they're saying, no, we'll pay you monthly. Don't you get that idea? It is true, I did not know that he had such a big family. Because of this, he might prefer to stay in the north. The utmost one could do would be for me to leave the south and go and join him in Brittany, if this would solve his difficulties. So can you believe it? Vincent's actually contemplating, like, as much as he's invested in the south, he's renting a house, he's furnishing a house, he's loving the landscape, he's doing really well. He's willing to drop all of that and then just go to where Gogh is. It just shows you almost a desperation. And I don't know if it's just loneliness. I think it's also that there is a bit of a insecurity that he can't sell his art. That is just not happening. And I sort of get the feeling he wants to sort of rub shoulders with Gogh so that he can get some credibility, that he can get some recognition, that he can sell some of his art. Don't you get that idea? Just incredible that he's invested so much and is willing to drop all of it to basically be where Gogh is. You kind of get the feeling he sees Gogh as like the magic, the Midas touch. If he can get a little bit of that magic to sprinkle onto him, maybe he can sell some of his work. Okay, so he says, for all that, one should not think lightly of a change. Yeah, you shouldn't. Besides, I'm a bit afraid of being scolded for having separated him from his family. Or, excuse me, or for having stirred up some such hornet's nest. My God, if he has such a big family, it is probably his duty not to be absent himself anymore. And possibly he would be much happier if you simply bought a picture from him once in a while. If for the present I've neither referred to these two passages in his letter nor to certain others, it is because I feel it is too difficult to say yes to them candidly. If, on the other hand, his whole plan is nothing but a fata morgana. What's that? I think we checked this out previously. Kind of mirage. it's an Italian term for a Fata Morgana is an Italian term for the Arthurian sorceress Morgan Le Fay, from a belief that these mirages, often seen in the Strait of Messina, were fairy castles in the air or false land created by a witchcraft to lure sailors to their deaths. You know, it's actually incredible that he's using that term, because in a weird way, and I seem to remember saying this in my book, that Gogh would be kind of a Fata Morgana anyway. Gogh would represent a kind of mirage, like, I'm coming to you. I'm coming to, oh yes, I'm on my way, and then he just never arrives. Like, Gogh, I think I can see you in the distance. I see you on your way. Yes, I am coming. Have you bought the train ticket? I'm on my way. I haven't quite bought the train ticket yet, but I am on my way. But are you like on the train? No, I'm not on the train yet. But are you at the train station? No, I'm not at. Have you started moving from your home to the train station? No, 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 no. But I am on my way. Right? You can see how that can be a bit distressing if you're like. I remember. I don't know what you guys will say about this. You might think it's a bit pathetic, but I remember as a kid. I had a best friend called Francois. We were like childhood friends for 7 years or so, and then I think he ended up moving to Canada. Today he's a medical doctor, but I remember when he would come visit. Um, so it would be like, okay, Francois is going to come visit, and then I would be like, okay. What time is he coming? 11 o'clock. Then I would start waiting in the front garden, say an hour or half an hour, whatever, ahead of time. I don't know. Did you guys ever do that? So like, and it happened quite a few times. And I remember once I waited and I waited, and eventually it was an hour late. He still wasn't there. And then it was like, I'm not sure. And then his mother said something like, sorry, he had to have his hair done or whatever. Um, um, it's late now, maybe you can come another day. And I remember that happened once or twice. Definitely remember that happening once or twice. But did any of you do that? Did any of you, when a friend was going to come visit, I'm talking when you were young kids, like, I don't know, 7 years old or something, wait outside for your friend to arrive? Or is that, anyone else do that? Anyone else here that pathetic? But anyway, that is, I think, what Van Gogh was doing. He was basically like psychologically waiting outside, like, aren't you coming any moment, kind of thing, you know. Stephanie says, I did, yeah. Is that something like all kids do, or just some kids? Jody says, I did as well. Okay. Oh, so it's not that unusual. Okay. Kristen says, I can tell you, I would sit outside and wait on my friends to come out. Okay. No, I mean, I think some friendships when you're a child, and sorry, I meant to do this. Do you remember movies like My Girl? When who's that child actor? I think he was also in Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin, right? I'm thinking about the right movie, where although it is just a summer here in your past, it's an incredibly intimate relationship. There's no sexual component to it, but there's an incredible bond between two people. It could be between a boy and a girl, it could be between two boys, it could be between two girls, I guess, right? But I'm just talking about in that place where you're a young person, you can have these incredibly close friendships, right? Where you really love this person, you really enjoy who they are, and it's within um, that whole dreamy time of childhood, and it's something you share a very precious period of discovery with another person that's also sharing that. It is actually quite special. And so I think I'm overemphasizing it, but there's a little bit of that going on with Gogh. If you think about it, Vincent never really had any friends. If you think about it, you go across his entire life, he doesn't really have girlfriends. He doesn't really have friends that are boys. And this is almost like for the first time, really in his entire life. Bear in mind, he started he got a full-time job at like 15, 16. And before that he was like the pastor's son kind of thing, but you kind of get the feeling he's never really had a friend. And now it's suddenly, now he's 35 years old, and now it's like a friend is going to be, who's also an artist, he's going to be living with him. It's going to be a real friend. It's almost like he's Pinocchio, and when Gogh arrives, he's going to be a real boy. Van Gogh is going to be a real boy. And in a sense, what that means is Van Gogh being a real boy means he's going to be a real artist. He's going to be a real artist in Gogh's eyes, and that's going to be incredible. And he's going to feel like a real person at last, because nobody, when he does something, nobody sees him. He's a non-entity, and yet, so when Gogh comes there, he's going to, in a way, reflected in Gogh's eyes and mind and whatever, Vincent's going to come alive as a person, and because that's how lonely he is. And then, of course, that's not what happens. Instead, Gogh basically is like, Jeepers, I'm getting out of here, which is a reinvalidation. It's like, this person that I trusted, that I loved, that I had so much expectation, has now, and look at when he abandons him, when he's almost bled to death and lost his ear. I mean, that's not, if who needs enemies if you've got friends like that, right? Timmy, come. Are you feeling a bit lonely? Huh? You feeling a little bit lonely? Huh? Lonely. This is someone who waits outside, or if I go out the front door, jumps up against the door and doesn't doesn't appreciate being left alone. But then when we go out together, then he runs off. Yeah, we're talking about you. Okay, so there've been some quite interesting side narratives to this session, hasn't there? But let's try and get to the end of these letters. Okay. So that was all about Fata Morgana. So I think that's really a good way to think about Paul Gogh. He is a Fata Morgana in a not a good way, like in a curse way. Then he talks about their traveling expenses, the debt at the inn, his doctor's bill. Now he mentions another debt of 300 francs, which he will pay off with that picture, if that art lover he knows agrees, but if he doesn't agree. So can you see how Gauguin is really like a wrecking ball? He's all over the place. He's got doctor's bills. He's got big debts. He's left his family in the lurch. And this is who Van Gogh wants to come and stay with him. This is who he wants to sort of validate him in a way. In short, it would not be very prudent to hold out expectations beyond our means and to enter into greater obligations than we could fulfill. Well, if only Van Gogh could have taken his own advice, because at a certain point he starts to develop expectations. At a certain point he starts to develop anticipation. At a certain point he starts getting excited, only to be disappointed and let down again and again, no more so than when Gogh actually arrives and then leaves, right? Gogh may say that he's very, very agitated and this is bad enough and will not do his work any good. No, one must not change haphazardly without taking into account those doubts and alterations whose existence is not auspicious. The more I calm down here, the more I recover my strength, the more I feel that after all my work is the only sure thing. Can you see really at this point, again, just how in what a good place Van Gogh is calm, he's recovered. It says his work is the only sure thing, and his work is becoming very sure, right? He says, I admit that if life in Brittany is considerably cheaper, I should, if necessary, have to sacrifice my plan to work here. So that, again, he's saying, I'll give all of this up just to go and sort of hang out with Gogh. And there was a time that I considered the possibilities. All of the strangeness with Van Gogh, all of the intrigue, is that because he's gay? And for a while, that seemed to be an adequate explanation. But um, when you see how he operates with women, yeah, he's definitely not gay. Anyway, he says, but all the more reason to work hard at the 50 pictures that I should like to have finished before speaking again about projects of the kind we discussed last winter. So can you see it's the middle of summer in France, and he's saying, from this moment, it's like the starting line. I want to paint 50 pictures. That's my goal. You know, like I said at a certain point, I didn't like write book number 1 and say I want to write 100 books, but I was somewhere like book number 70, and I thought, I wonder if I'm going to get to 100 books. And then I was like, well, that's where I need to get to, and then I'll stop. I'll retire from that. Anyway, so he says, just now a letter arrived from home. At present, I'm feeling so well that it is not indispensable for me to stay here solely because of my health. So can you see he's diagnosing himself as so well and so healthy. So again, how does that change? We must try to arrange things in such a way that you are not overburdened with expenses. That is what is necessary, and it is serious enough. So again, like I say, we must try and enjoy this period for Van Gogh, because it doesn't really last. So here's a self-portrait. I wonder when this was painted. It looks like it could have been in oil because it's pretty colorful, but not my favorite one of his. That's quite a ginger beard, right? Look at the sort of blonde eyebrow over there. Anyway, this is the guy that his neighbors and the citizens of All are like, who is this guy? Anyway, 22nd June, dear sister, it's a letter to Wilhelmina. Many thanks for your letter, which I've been longing for. I dare not indulge my feelings to the extent of writing you often or of encouraging you to do the same. All this correspondence does not tend to keep us, who are of a nervous temperament, vigorous in case of possible immersions in melancholy, or of the type you mentioned in your letter, and to which I myself fall victim now and then. Can you see he says, yeah, sometimes I'm not terribly happy. He doesn't actually say depressed. He says, an acquaintance of ours used to assert that the best treatment for all diseases is to treat them with profound contempt. So he's not someone who feels sorry for himself. He's, something else. He's a fighter. The remedy for the immersion, which you mentioned, is not, as far as I know, to be found growing among the herbs with healing powers. Nevertheless, I'm in the habit of taking large quantities of bad coffee in such cases. not because it is very good for my already damaged collection of teeth, but because my strong imaginative powers enable me to have a devout faith worthy of an idolater or a Christian or a cannibal in the exhilarating influence of said fluid. Fortunately for my fellow creatures, I have until today refrained from recommending this and similar remedies as efficacious. The sun in these parts, that is something different. And also, if over a period of time one drinks wine, which at least partly is pressed from real grapes. I assure you that in our native country, people are as blind as bats. So there's some mutual contempt here, them for him, him for them. They're blind as bats and criminally stupid because they do not exert themselves to go more to the Indies or somewhere else where the sun shines. So now that he's not living in the Netherlands, he's saying that the folks at home are basically idiots. It is not right to know only one thing. One gets stultified by that. One should not rest before one knows the opposite too. It's quite an interesting comment there. What do you say about extenuating circumstances? Sorry, what do you say about extenuating circumstances, namely that, alas, they do not obviate the fact of one's having done something wrong or of having spoiled something very true? Only think of our national history, the rise and fall of the Dutch Republic, and you will understand what I mean. We must never invoke the excuse of extenuating circumstances, of our inability, and so on. Now, I think that's also quite interesting where he says you can never invoke extenuating circumstances as an excuse. Does that sound like someone who gets bogged down by life and gives up? It says never invoke the excuse of extenuating circumstances. You kind of get the idea that he never does, he never did. He just somehow transcends really a difficult scenario where he doesn't sell his work, he is sick, you know, he doesn't let his circumstances get the better of him. That's well said. Well said, Mal. Bridget says, I love that they treat diseases with contempt. Well, in retrospect, the disease he had, syphilis, you can't really treat with contempt. And we know what happened to Theo. So I'm just saying, psychologically, he's got quite a positive attitude. But if you do want to treat something like syphilis, that's not the way to go about it. Anyway, so he says it is less Christian in the sense of which it is diluted nowadays, but it is better for us and perhaps even for others. And energy begets energy. And I think that is his motto. Energy begets energy, and paralysis paralyzes others. You never really get a sense that Van Gogh is paralyzed. You never get the sense that he's inert, defeated, broken. You don't really get that sense, even when he's in the asylum. Even when he is broken by life, you get the feeling he's still, I don't know, he's still fighting. There's still a spark that's there. Even when he was shot, he wants to live. He tells the doctor, "Can you cut me open and get the bullet out of me?" He wants to smoke. He wants to talk to his brother. He that spark is there, you know. Carol says, "How do I log out? What's that about? What's that about?" Deb says, "It seems like he's only depressed when lonely or broke." Okay, let's continue. here we are now living in a world of painting, which is unutterably paralytic and miserable. The exhibitions, the picture stores, everything are in the clutches of fellows who intercept all the money. And do not suppose for a moment that this is only my imagination. People give a lot of money for the work after painter himself is dead. Ain't that the truth? Carol says well, you must hit the live button and that'll get you into where we are right now. I think you need to tell her that. To catch up in chat. I think you are caught up. Everything okay? Shall we all wait? Let's let Carol catch up with us. I think you are with us. Not too many people in chat, so it's only 40 people, so you should be with us. Anyway, okay. And they are always slighting the living painters, fortuitously defending themselves by pointing to the work of those who are no longer there. So that's the other thing that he's got to deal with is they are not only competing against photographers, but they've got to compete kind of against dead artists. It's like, I don't know what you painted here. Rembrandt's work is much better. Okay, but he's a dead artist. I don't know what you did here, but Da Vinci, I prefer that. Okay, great. I don't know what you did here, but Malay, Israel's, whatever, that's good art. Okay. And of course, nothing would be truer about money, giving a lot of money for work after the painter is dead, but Van Gogh. I mean, there's no truer example of that than Van Gogh. He can't sell anything except one picture in his life, and then after he's dead, it's priceless. And I don't know, you might say there's something tragically triumphant about that, but I find the hypocrisy of that says something about people in general. Can you not recognize something when it's there at that time? And if the answer is no, I can't, why can't you? Why can't you see reality? Why can't you recognize what's happening when it's happening? Why can't you recognize who someone is when they are who they are? And the same may even apply to you. The same may apply to me. Can you not see who you are? Can you not see who someone else is? If so, why not? Could Alex Murdoch not recognize where this downward spiral was going? Could he not predict where things would end up? Can we not predict it ourselves? Right? And the answer is to that is critical thinking. Why do you not see what's right in front of you? It is there, but why can you not see it? Why can you not see the woods for the trees? Lack of critical thinking. Okay, anyway, it goes on to say they are always slighting the living painters. Okay, I know we are unable to do anything to alter this, so for heaven's sake, one must resign oneself to it. There is yet another sort of another, what do you call it? Not another version, another instance of Van Gogh basically signing up to say, yeah, I know that this is the reality I've got to deal with. This is part and parcel of what I'm signing up for. I've got to resign myself to this is the way it is. He's not a victim here. He's saying this is the way it is and it's okay. I'll have to deal with it. He's not whining. He's saying it's tough and I'm going to take up the challenge. He's not crying about it. He's saying that's the way it is. He says, for heaven's sake, just resign yourself to it. Put that behind you and just let the work speak for itself. Meanwhile, people around him are chitter-chattering. How can we undermine this guy? How can we kick him out of our town? He's just trying to do his work. He's just trying to figure out what he needs to do. Meanwhile, he's being undermined right around him. He says, or try to find some other subvention, or conquer a rich woman, or something of the kind, or else one cannot work. All that one hopes for, independence through work, influence on others, all comes to nothing at all. So can you see how he is very self-aware and it's not like maybe I'm going to sell a painting tomorrow and then everything will be fine. He's not that deluded. He's not like, maybe, because you get a lot of people who are like that. Maybe the sun will come out and the stars will align, and for whatever random reason, like magical thinking, he's not a magical thinker. He's not saying, maybe just randomly I'll sell a painting just because I get lucky. It's almost like a golfer who's like, maybe if I hit a hole in one, I can win that tournament out of luck, not practice. So he's saying you can hope for stuff, you can hope for independence, you can hope to influence others, and maybe nothing happens. That's a possibility. That's reality. Is not naive to that. And you know what? I would be the first person to say that if he was a magical thinker, if he was thinking in fairy tales about his art, if he was thinking, maybe next week I'm going to sell my art and I'm going to become world famous. Maybe a countess is going to finally see me for who I am, and then I'm going to live happily ever after. But that's not what he does. He expects to struggle. He kind of wants to struggle. He expects to battle for a very long time. He expects it to be this long campaign. He's not struggling with magical thinking. But my point is, if he was, then I could imagine him waking up one day realizing this has all been a big con job that I've done on myself. And I'm so embarrassed. I'm such a loser. I'm such a I don't know, a failure. I've suddenly seen the light. My art's worthless, or I'm worthless. Then I can imagine him being the S word, right? I can imagine him suffering from depression and suddenly, losing the plot. But the thing is, all along throughout his life, he's signs up for this hard battle. And then in the end, he actually doesn't really seem to care. It's like, you know what? I found my groove. I'm enjoying the art, and the world must just, I guess, catch up when they eventually do. Yvonne says that's the road of an artist, to know that it may never come to anything. And I mean that I think is a true artist, in a sense where you able to kind of let that go, right? I once exhibited in a put together a little bit of an exhibition, and I don't think I sold anything. This was in like an art market setting, and people came by, looked at what I did, and just walked by. And every time someone stops and they look at your art, your heart kind of beats. It's like, and then they walk by, and then you end up going through that 100 times, and then at the end of the day, you pack up all your art and you didn't sell anything. That's a short version of what Van Gogh has to endure. Definitely not easy. Okay, let's continue. He says, and yet it is a certain cheapest. How long is this letter? This is a really, really long letter. This is a book. Cheapest. Yahweh. Okay, I don't think I'm going to read. I don't think I'm going to read this entire letter. I'm going to just maybe read a couple more paragraphs. I definitely cannot go through this entire letter. It's too much. Sorry. Um, Someone must do a word count on this letter. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 5,000 words or 10,000 words or something. It says, and yet it is a certain pleasure to paint a picture, and yet at this very moment there are some 20 painters here. Wow, that's quite a lot. All having more debts than money, etc., all leading lives approximately comparable to the lives of street dogs. And that's kind of what I'm saying, is that the residents, the neighbors, the neighborhood see him as a street dog, literally. They don't think he has any value as a human being. They think he's scum. They think he's um, yeah, like a dog, and we need to get rid of the dog, get the dog to the dog pound, get the dog off the streets, right? And they want him out of their town. He's a nuisance. He's dirty, whatever it is, and that's why it's such a hypocrisy. You come to all, and the whole of all is kind of like basically a Van Gogh tourist attraction. There's a museum there. There's a little I don't know, something dedicated to this that he did over there. This Van Gogh, that Van Gogh. The canal is named after him. And yet when he lived there, he's treated like a dog. That's why I'm just saying, couldn't you have done that when he was alive? And it's not just in all, it's also in Orvez. He's treated a little bit better there. The innkeeper treats him a little bit better. And you kind of wonder, do they treat him better because they see him almost as disabled because he's missing an ear? Or do they why do they treat him better? But I mean, Dr. Gachet ultimately what does he think of Van Gogh? Is he just using him? Anyway, he says, we are going to be of perhaps more importance than the whole of the official exhibition as far as the future style of painting is concerned. So here he says how he kind of predicts the future. He says the painters here have the lives of street dogs, but they're going to have more importance than certain exhibitions in the future. And he's right. He was right about that. It's quite visionary for a street dog. I should imagine that the most distinctive characteristic of the paint is being able to paint. Those who are able to paint the best, are the beginnings of something that will last a long time to come. They will go on existing as long as there are eyes capable of enjoying something that is specifically beautiful. But I always regret that one cannot make oneself richer by working harder. Right? It says there, I always regret that one cannot make oneself richer by working harder. If only one could do that, one would be able to achieve a good deal more, get associated with others and whatnot. That's what he's trying to do with Gogh, get associated with him. Anyway, I'm not going to take it any further than that in terms of this letter. You can see can you see where the cursor is there? This is already like probably 1/5 of the letter. I'm definitely not going to read the rest, but it is definitely an interesting letter. You can maybe come back to it separately. So that's your homework. Your homework is to read this letter and to review it. And you can review it in the comments. Terry, are you listening? Your homework, if you choose to accept, how does that thing go in Mission Impossible? Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to read this letter. And if you want to review it and highlight parts of it, you can do it in the comments, okay? Okay, so let's go on to the next letter. 23rd June 1888. So yeah, he's done a sketch of that. That's pretty terrible if you ask me. Look how lopsided the eyes are. Jeez. Okay, and then there's that one, which I think we've seen. Eye of the Tiger, right? Anyway, so this is the 23rd of June. My dear Theo, many thanks for your letter and the 50 franc note. I did not know that the article on Claude Monet was by the same person as the one on Bismarck. It does one good to read things like that, more than most of the stuff the decadents write, with their passion for saying the most obvious things in the most wildly contorted phrases. So can you see he's not a fan of the pretentious art crowd? I'm very dissatisfied with what I've been doing lately because it is very ugly. Well, that's certainly, yeah, that is certainly ugly. But all the same, figure is interesting me more than the landscape. Well, that's too bad because he's really doing well with the landscape. I mean, cheapest, he was on a good wicket with the picture you see behind me. Why not just keep that up? You know, anyway. It says, anyway, I shall send you a drawing of the Zouave today. In the end, making studies of figures so as to experiment and to learn will be the shortest way for me to do something worthwhile. Bernard has got to the point today. He sent me a rough sketch of a brothel, which I'm sending you enclosed to hang beside his clowns, which you already have. There's a poem on the back of the drawing in just the same tone as the drawing. Probably he has more finished painted study of it. If you think about it, how many men do you know, like today, that write letters to one another, and they're men, they're men, uh, they who write letters to one another with drawings of fields and poems, and how many men do you know that do that? Um, even I suppose you could say YouTubers who do that. How many do you know? Gloria says farewell to all. Thanks for the lecture. Thank you to our student. Thank you, Gloria. The rest of the class, let's continue. So he says, I do not want to deprive him of studies which he can sell. It is still raining heavily here, which is doing a great deal of harm to the wheat that is still standing. Okay, so that explains why he's not painting landscapes. Fortunately, I have a model these days. I'm in need of a book, The ABCD of Drawing by A. Kassan. I asked for it at the bookshop here, and after waiting a fortnight, they told me that they must have the name of the publisher, which I do not know. I'd be very grateful if you could send it to me. Can you believe it? The guy who painted the picture behind me wants the ABCD of drawing. Can you believe it? I'd be very grateful if you send it. The carelessness, the lazy, happy-go-lucky ways of the people are beyond belief. Can you see there seems to be kind of mutual contempt? The locals aren't liking him very much. He calls the people here lazy and happy-go-lucky, and he doesn't really like it. And they don't really like him. What's going to happen? You have trouble getting the most trifling things. That is why I'll have to go to Marseille someday to get what I want there. The cost of carriage from Paris is no joke and runs up the price of things, but to have to run one's errands in Marseille makes them even more expensive. What often vexes me is that painting is like having a bad mistress who spends and spends and it's never enough. That's a really good. See, he's not lost in the woods. He knows what's going on. He appreciates what's going on, right? He says, painting is like having a bad mistress who spends and spends and it's never enough. And I tell myself that even if a tolerable study comes out of it from time to time, it would have been much cheaper just to buy it from someone else. The other thing, the hope of doing better is rather, he says it again, a fata morgana too. So, he's on the right track. He's predicting his own reality. It's not like it's going to hit him like a boomerang. He's he knows what's coming. He knows in a way what maelstrom is in, right? He says there's no quick remedy for all this unless sometime or another you can join hands with a good worker and produce more together. As for the publisher of Kassan's book, surely you have his treatise on perspective and the address must be in it. He's saying to his brother, surely you've got another one of his books and let's just get the publisher from there. Besides, they keep those books at La Louche and Ruse in the Chaussee d'Antin, that place that always has the continuations of the various series. I wonder how Bria is. Whenever I've got to say these French words, I sort of wish that she could share the narration. It is great that Claude Monet managed to paint those 10 pictures between February and May. 10 pictures between February and May. It's about 2 pictures a month. Quick work doesn't mean less serious work. And I kind of get that as well. It's like the more books I've written mean the less they're worth, right? The more books I've written means the less seriously you take me as an author. It's like, okay, thanks for that. Anyway, the same applies to Van Gogh. Oh, you painted a lot of paintings? Okay, well, so they can't, any of them can't be worth anything. And look where they are today. Anyway, he says, it depends on one's self-confidence and experience. He's saying quick work depends on self-confidence and experience. In the same way, Jules Gerard, the lion hunter, says in his book that in the beginning, young lions have a lot of trouble killing a horse or an ox, but that the old lions kill with a single blow of the paw or a well-placed bite, and that they are amazingly sure at the job. I see nothing here of the southern gaiety that Daudet talks about so much. It's funny, I actually sent a text to my father earlier today talking about old lions that are still rivals. It's quite interesting that this is kind of mentioned here as well. Old lions and young lions. Anyway, I see nothing here of the southern gaiety that Daudet talks about so much. But on the contrary, all kinds of insipid airs and graces, a sordid carelessness. So can you see he's starting to be agitated by the culture in a way, by the attitude of the locals. Did you notice that? Stephanie says, I reached out to her yesterday. I think I will reach out to her as well. We're also thinking about Denise. Nisi, also thinking about you. Okay. Nature here, however, must be very different from what it is at Bordighera, Geneva, or Antibes, where there's less mistral. Yeah, I'm sure it would be different. And where the mountains have an entirely different character. Yeah, except for an intenser coloring, it reminds me of Holland. Everything is flat. Only one thinks rather of the Holland of Raysdale or Hobima or Stade. So he kind of has this weird translocated nostalgia. It's like Holland with sun, Holland with warmth, right? I've been in both countries, and I suppose he has a point, but I mean, I don't think he's headed into those Alpines yet, because there's literally nowhere in Holland that is anywhere near the type of high mountains that you get just outside Hull. I mean, literally, it's so just he needs to go for a bit of a longer wander, and then he will get to see another side of France. I also don't think Auvers-sur-Oise is much like Holland. It's its own place. It does have the country farmyard feel. I think maybe that's what he's getting at. And beyond the old buildings, all and Orvez do have a country farmyard feeling about them. There's a, farm fields that are still that are still being plowed and whatever, that definitely is a similarity. Okay, he says, what surprises me is the scarcity of flowers. There are no cornflowers in the wheat and seldom poppies. I don't know if that's changed, because when I was there were poppies all over the place. And of course, there aren't that many flowers in summer, in the middle of summer. But then the other side of it is the Netherlands is like a flower paradise in a way, especially tulips and that sort of thing. And I mean, if you think about the image behind me, you could almost imagine that that's a field of yellow tulips. If you couldn't see it very clearly, you might think, oh, is that a field of tulips in Holland? You get what I'm saying. Okay. Zircon says, my grandpa is a Dutch immigrant. Okay. Mine as well. Mine as well. In fact, my father spoke Dutch as an infant, and very unusual for South Africa, because most Dutch folk become Afrikaners. My father went from Dutch to English, which is, as I say, quite unusual. Okay. Funny enough, my father also started a construction business, and he got the name from an American company. So he was like thinking, what name do I want for this business? And then don't ask me how, maybe he saw it in a magazine, but he saw this name and he liked it. And it was a American construction company that he basically took the name and used. Just quite interesting. What is the cost of the carriage on that last case of pictures? The impasto on some of the canvases is dry on the surface, but not enough to be rolled, or else I would send them. So one thing we also want to look out for is when he's going to start that technique where he paints very quickly, where he uses that thick impasto technique, and yeah, both of those together, those sort of energy lines, thick impasto, and he paints everything in one go, not over a week, but over like an hour or two. When's that going to happen? Then he says, McKnight is a friend with him now. I never see any of his work. That's the American. Yesterday I showed 4 or 5 new studies to him and his friend. They looked at them in frosty silence. Not a good sign. Yes, I was born in South Africa. So, yeah, I would also look at this in frosty silence. Mr. McKnight, what do you think of this sketch? That would be my response. How about you? If they're preparing a surprise on their own account, and I hope it'll be good, because it would give me great pleasure to see what they have found their way. So it seems like his association with McKnight is starting to sour as well. They don't have, I mean, McKnight said the picture behind me, that's your best work so far. So he does say good things when they're warranted, but now he's not saying anything good, and now Van Gogh's not terribly happy. He got a bad review. He's got a 1-star review, and he's like, I'd like to see you do better, right? That's kind of his response. Then he says, a handshake for you and Moria if he is not already installed in the studio. Ever yours, Vincent. Okay. How many letters do we have left? Jeez, this month's going on for ages. 23rd, 24th, 28th, 29th. I don't know if we're going to get through June, I'm afraid. These letters are just so damn long. So this is not a Van Gogh. This is Christ on the Sea of Galilee by Delacroix. That's a painting that he references. Okay, I think I'm going to stop here. These letters are just so long, so I'm not going to deal with this. It's over 3 hours already, past 2 o'clock in the morning here. So, dear Bernard, you do very well to be reading the Bible. I begin with that because I've always refrained from advising you to do so. Anyway, okay, so that's as far as I'm going to take it. Sorry, this is turning out to be a real slog through these letters. Yeah, I thought I'd get through June. Yeah, I haven't gotten through June yet. Yeah, and I was hoping to get through 1888. Never mind, like June, July, August, September. We're not even through June. You can imagine how lonely he must be if he's writing such long letters. I mean, if they're taking so long to read, you must know how long they take to write. So anyway, thanks a lot, Stephanie. I'm glad you appreciated it. I do need some rest. I'm going to try and get to sleep within not too long. Thanks a lot, Yvonne. Can you hear someone snoring? Someone's very comfortable. Someone is very spoiled. Someone is a very spoiled doggy person. Carol says, I really enjoyed this. That's good to hear. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I'm going to do something I don't normally do, just very quickly, and just Google Vincent van Gogh and just see what is going on in the news, because there always is on Van Gogh right now. Let's just see if there's anything worth sharing. So, Van Gogh, Van Gogh's birthday, I think, is the 29th of March. So here are a couple of stories. The one is not really relevant, but the other one is. I'll just quickly go through this. Van Gogh, the one-eared dog who paints to end pet homelessness, gets, so just a dog named after Van Gogh is earning thousands. I think Van Gogh would probably be turning in his grave, or maybe he'd be smiling, who knows. Van Gogh, the dog, paints to help end pet homelessness. There he is. Happily forever after rescue. Quite a good cause, right? And so there's some of his artwork. Starry Night by Van Gogh the dog. And there is Almond Blossoms by Van Gogh the dog. And Self-Portrait. And yeah, Sunflowers. Okay. Okay, so that's not really that serious, but this is, you may recognize this person, the art newspaper. Deal reached in dispute. This is going on in America right now. Deal reached in dispute over Van Gogh painting held at the Detroit Institute of Arts. The museum says it spent $100,000 on its defense and that the injunction against it sets a dangerous precedent. So yeah, you literally have a court case, a trial happening right now in America dealing with a Van Gogh painting. You can read this. This is written by our friend Martin Bailey, I think. Oh no, it's not. Benjamin Sutton. And just very quickly, the dispute of Vincent van Gogh's The Novel Reader, 1888. This was painted during the Arles period, has been resolved out of court. The loser may be the Detroit Institute of Arts, which an appeals court ordered in January to hold onto the painting pending the resolution of the ownership dispute. It had been loaned to the museum for its blockbuster Van Gogh in America exhibition, which closed on 22nd January. So I'm not quite sure what happened. Did the painting, someone absconded with the painting, I guess. It says here, someone, collector, purchased the novel read in 2017 for $3.7 million. So the art that Van Gogh is painting and pottering about with today are worth multiple millions of dollars. So if you think that Van Gogh is this idiot that's just rambling along, who's a street dog, no, he's actually a artistic superstar. And his art is the subject of legal bickering matches even today. It's kind of a big deal. So yeah, there's so much, there are so many layers to the Van Gogh story. It's pretty incredible. Anyway, that's it. Josie says good night, mods. Deborah D. Good to see you guys. Okay, I'll maybe see you guys tomorrow this time. I'm just a bit despondent that it's such a trudge through these letters. I'm kind of tempted to start skipping a little bit. Maybe we need to skip into July. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, guys, thanks a lot. Mods, thanks a lot for being here. Keep weaving, guys. And Timmy says good night. And guys, I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Ciao.